All right, ladies and gentlemen, the day has finally arrived. Time for me to begin my solo leveling light novel reading. Now, many of you know that I got introduced to this series through the manhwa during, I want to say a handful of years ago, maybe about over 4 years ago, possibly. And over the course of me reading this story, people told me, you got to check out the light novel. You got to check out the light novel. You got to check out the light novel. And I'm like, let me just read the manhwa first. And I'm grateful for those people being patient because now today we are going to check out the light novel. And I am going to go through the entire series the same way I do basically any other series where I read it several chapters at a time, once per week. We are going to do it the same way we did Kaiju number 8. But the difference between this is you're just going to hear my voice. So and for those who didn't tune in to my community posts that I had put up earlier today, I said that the way we're going to be doing this is 10 chapters at a time, which is perfect because the final chapter of the series ends on a basically a 10 as well, so everything just coincides. Already got the thumbnails made for the future. And the way this works is that it's just going to be audio only. Because, with the light novel, I don't have to worry about people saying, like, show images, because there aren't any. So, how we're going to do this is the screen will be this way. So, everything you guys say in chat will be off to the side. And I'll be paying attention to that as I go. So that way we can, I can comment on a couple of things and, hear your thoughts as we go. This will be the trial run. How well we do today will determine how I do things going forward. So, yeah, let's go and get started. Welcome, everyone, to Solo Leveling's light novel. Let's go and get started with Chapter 1. And this time, even though I tried doing it for plenty of series in the past, this one I will make sure I timestamp so you all know which chapter goes where. So, if anyone is watching this later on in the future, you will know where a chapter starts and where it ends. So, I will go through every single one of these streams after I'm done and timestamp where I go. So, let's begin. Chapter 1, Part 0, Prologue. Daily Quest is now available. An articulate voice of a young female. This was definitely not a game. Of course, it wasn't a dream either. But her voice definitely resounded within my head. Heck, I could even see the quest window floating in midair, too. Could it be? Even today? While fervently praying in my head, I cautiously opened the information window. Tiring. Daily Quest. Preparations to become strong. Press up 100 times. Incomplete. 0 out of 100. Sit up 100 times. Incomplete. 0 out of 100. Squat 100 times. Incomplete. 0 out of 100. Running 10 kilometers. Incomplete. 0 out of 100. Warning. Incompletion of daily quests will result in appropriate levels of punishment. As soon as I got to confirm the contents of the daily quest, I began cussing out reflexively. Just how many days has it been already? Part 1. Rank E Hunter. Rank E Hunter Sung Jinu. No matter where he went, this title always followed him around. Jinu's overall strength was almost the same as a regular human being, with the exception of being a bit stronger and his wounds healing slightly faster. Jinu was about the same as regular people in every other aspect. It was par for the course, then, that he'd always end up getting injured. He nearly died several times, too. Of course, it wasn't as if Sung Jinu liked being a hunter. The work was dangerous, others made fun of him, and to confound the matters even further, the pay was pretty pathetic as well. If it weren't for the medical aid paid out by the Hunters Association to the hunters in their payroll, he'd have turned in his hunter license and quit by now, and live his life like a regular person. Unfortunately, Someone like Sung Jinu in his mid-20s and lacking in any tangible job skills, there was no other way but to remain as a hunter if he wanted to pay for his mother's hospital fee of millions of won every month. Should one say that he had no choice in the matter? That was why, even though he didn't want to, he simply had to participate in the raid supervised by the association. Hunters operating within the same area tended to know each other pretty well. In the event of a gate opening up, all the hunters in that district would be asked to come. That's why. The hunters who had arrived early sipped on the cups of coffee handed out by the association's employee and shared cordial greetings with each other.
Oh, hey, Mr. Kim. Over here, here.
Oh, Mr. Park? What are you doing here? I thought you were giving up on being a hunter.
Well, my wife is pregnant with our second child.
Is that so? Yeah, for a hunter to earn big in one go, participating in a raid is the best, isn't it?
Mr. Kim jovially burst out in laughter. Mr. Park followed suit with a sheepish chuckle, before asking Kim,
By the way, why do I feel like the association is calling on us less and less nowadays? Did the number of gates decrease or something?
Of course, Of course not. That's only because the guilds are getting all worked up over clearing the gates. It's got nothing to do with the association. I hear that various guilds are jumping in with both feet since there's big profit involved in this whole thing.
Well, in that case, since this raid is being supervised by the association, it should be safe, no?
Mr. Park took a glance around as if he was getting nervous. If a guild was not involved today, that meant there wasn't enough profit to be had. And if there wasn't enough profit to be had, then that could only mean that this particular gate's difficulty would be low. Of course, nothing in this world was 100% absolute. It wasn't just Mr. Park. Other hunters were nervously glancing around as well.
I wonder.
Mr. Kim finished the rest of his coffee while avoiding answering his friend, before spotting a certain someone and raised his hand in happiness.
He's here! Hey, Mr. Song! Mr. Song!
Other hunters also displayed joy at discovering that young man.
Hello.
It was none other than Sung Jinu. Jinu performed a simple nod of the head at the joyous Mr. Kim and walked by. After making sure Jinu was well out of earshot, Mr. Kim began sniggering while confidently speaking up.
So, Jinu showed up. Then it's going to be okay today.
Mr. Park's eyes widened up and he hurriedly asked him,
What was that? Is that hunter Sung Jinu really strong?
And I appear to have gotten the voices mixed up.
So, Sung Jinu showed up. Then it's going to be okay today.
Mr. Park's eyes widened up and he hurriedly asked Kim,
What was that? Was that hunter Sung Jinu really strong?
Ah, right. Of course you wouldn't know who he is. He's a hunter who started working shortly after you left, you see. However, every hunter here knows who that kid is by now.
He's really that strong? Wait, why is he working for the association then? Why not for a guild or a freelancer?
Kim sniggered some more before narrowing his eyes.
You know what that guy's nickname is?
How should I know that? Come on, man, just tell me already.
Humanity's weakest weapon.
Weakest? Not something like the ultimate weapon?
Dude, that's the nickname for the rank S hunter Choi Jong-in. That kid is the weakest weapon. I'm pretty sure he's the weakest hunter in the Republic of Korea.
Really?
Park began frowning deeply. Why would other hunters greet this Sung Jinu if he was really that weak? After all, didn't they need someone to trust their backs if things went south? Park couldn't really understand the reactions of other hunters. When Park's head tilted this way and that, Kim chuckled and poked the side of Park with his elbow.
The raid Sung Jinu participates in will only have low difficulty because he's so weak. The association would never entrust him with a tough job, don't you get that? They don't want to see him get killed, right?
Only then did Park's expression brighten up.
Yeah, right, yeah.
His wife was deeply worried about him since this would be his first raid in quite a while. Honestly, even he himself was worried too. However, now that he listened to Kim's words, he felt like a weight was lifted off his mind. Kim continued on.
That guy, there was a rumor not too long ago that said he got injured participating in a raid of a rank E gate and spent a week in the hospital.
A hunter got injured by a rank E gate?
That's right. No one expected to see a hunter getting injured during a rank E gate raid, so they didn't even bring along a healer, apparently.
That's why he spent the week in a hospital?
When Park began guffawing too loudly, Kim hurriedly hushed him.
Stop it, man. Mr. Sung might hear you.
Ugh, I didn't think of that.
Park cautiously checked Jinu's reactions as he continued to giggle. Thankfully, the distance was far enough and the youth didn't seem to have heard them. Of course, they were mistaken.
I can hear everything, you geezers.
A bitter smile formed on Jinu as he tried hard to ignore them. At times like today, he couldn't help but blame his unusually acute sense of hearing. It seemed that he arrived too early and the raid was yet to commence. Did I arrive too early? Jinu looked around to while away the waiting time, spotted the association employee handing out warm coffee, and walked closer. Can I get a cup of coffee as well? Oh, Sung Jinu Hunternim. I'm really sorry, but we ran out of coffee just now. Silence. The cold winter breeze brushed past the tip of his nose. Jinu quietly wiped his nose with his index finger. What a sad day it was, for the coffee to run out as soon as it was his turn to get one. Why do you persist on being a hunter, Mr. Sung Jinu? I'm sorry. Jinu lowered his head and apologized. The young, beautiful girl using healing magic in front of Jinu, Yi Jui, showed how unhappy she was with a pouting expression.
I'm not trying to get you to apologize, you know. I'm only worried about you. If you continue fighting this way, sooner or later you'll be faced with a truly dangerous situation.
Jinu glanced past Yi Jui's shoulders and took a look at other hunters fighting over yonder. When one entered through the gate, one would arrive at a place called Dungeon. The rank of this particular dungeon should be around D. A dozen plus hunters were taking care of the monsters inside this dungeon without so much as breaking a sweat. Unfortunately, for a rank E, such a feat was nearly impossible. Normally, the job of healing the injured hunters from the back fell on the healers. Since he always got injured during raids, Jinu was rather well-known among the healers. I said well-known instead of well-known. My apologies. Jinu was rather well-known among the healers. Yi Jui cautiously asked him,
Perchance, is there a reason why you can't give up being a hunter?
Jinu resolutely shook his head. He didn't want to reveal anything personal to other people. I'm only doing this as a hobby. If I don't do this, I'll probably die of boredom, actually. Jui pouted even more.
If you continue on this hobby of yours, soon you'd be raiding a dungeon in the netherworld, you know.
Jinu was taken off guard from her remark and ended up chuckling out loudly. Thanks to that, Jui's nagging intensified.
Don't laugh! Don't! Your injuries might get worse!
Jinu giggled before asking her, Where did you even learn to say stuff like that?
What do you mean, where? It's from Mr. Kim way over there.
And I don't know if this word in Korean means something, so I'm just going to say old geezer. I don't know if he's, cursing in Korean, so I'm just going to avoid that. Aigoo, that old man really did it, didn't he? As they chatted and laughed, his treatment was almost over. It was already too late by then, though. It seemed that the raid was pretty much over now. Jinu's expression hardened. I only killed a single monster today. A rank E creature, no less. Sung Jinu began fidgeting with the Renki magic crystal in his hand. The lowest grade magic crystal from a Renki monster fetched less than 100,000 won. For something he bet his life to earn, it was a pathetically small amount. And just to clarify, that just amounts to $88. A magic crystal from a rank C monster can sell for over 10 million won though, and that is $8,830 plus. Too bad a rank E hunter such as himself couldn't even attempt to kill a monster with a rank as high as C. Ramil, good to see you. Out of the blue, someone shouted out, hey, there's another entrance over here. The nearby hunters rushed over.
Huh? It's true.
There really is another path. Just as that hunter said, there was an entrance hidden within the dungeon itself.
A dual dungeon, is it? So such a thing actually exists for real.
Mr. Song, possessing over 10 years' experience as a hunter, looked into the hidden entrance and displayed how surprised he was. The interior of the hidden cave-like passage was dark, and nothing could be seen. Mr. Song activated his specialty, flame magic, and tossed it further forward into the passage. The flame flew forward and illuminated the interior. The passageway seemed to go on forever. Soon enough, the flame lost its forward momentum, fell to the ground, and smoldered for a bit before flickering out of existence. The passage was shrouded in darkness once more. Everyone, gather around. Let's have a meeting. The unspoken leader of this raid, Mr. Song, called for other hunters to gather around. Jinu's treatment was over by then, so he and Ju-yi also joined in. Song spoke up while sweeping his gaze over the gathered hunters.
As you know very well, a gate will not close unless the dungeon's boss is killed. Since the gate itself is still intact even though we took care of all the monsters here, that can only mean that the boss is beyond that passageway.
Song pointed towards the hidden entrance. Hunters exchanged meaningful glances and nodded their heads. No one could disagree with that notion. Song continued on.
Now, normally, we're supposed to relay this information back to the association and wait for their decision first, but if we do that, we might end up handing over the task of killing the boss to other hunters, and our takings for today's raid would decrease by a lot.
The expressions of the hunters crumpled. Park's face hardened more than anyone else since he needed a lot of cash for his wife's pregnancy.
Postnatal care eats up so much cash nowadays, you know.
At this rate, there'd be no meaning behind him risking his life to participate in this raid. That's why
I prefer if we took care of the boss before leaving this dungeon.
And this is still Park, so that's on me. My bad.
That's why I'd prefer if we took care of the boss before leaving this dungeon. So, what do you all think?
Hunters fell into a deep contemplation. The truth was, no one here could figure out the current situation, and so their safety could not be guaranteed. However, the difficulty of this particular dungeon proved to be very low, so the hidden dungeon within couldn't have been that difficult either. Song coughed to draw everyone's attention to himself.
Since we have 17 people here, let's put this to a vote, shall we? Once the decision has been made, no complaints. So, how about it?
Crazy how if they turned back now the whole series never would have happened?
So, how about it?
Others nodded their heads after hearing Song's suggestion. No one was disagreeing with him.
I vote for going ahead.
Song raised his hand. And then, other hunters began raising their hands one by one.
Me too. Count me in as well.
Park was the first to raise his hand, followed shortly after by Kim and a few other hunters. So it was,
Me too!
Count me in as well.
Park was the first to raise his hand, followed shortly after by Kim and a few other hunters. Of course, Those disagreeing were plentiful too.
Let's go back.
I feel that it'd be better to wait for the association's decision.
The two opposing camps were neck and neck, and eventually, the final votes came down to Jino and Jui.
I'm so sorry.
Jui bowed to Song and added her vote to retreat camp. And so, the vote count for go ahead and retreat was at 8-8, a deadlock. Song asked the hesitant Sung Jinu next.
And you, Mr. Sung?
And that concludes Chapter 1. Onwards to Chapter 2. Everything now depended on Sung Jinu's decision. Jinu's fingers grasped tight the ranky magic crystal in his hand as he took a glance next to him. Jui was shaking her head at him. It looked like she was deeply worried. Actually, Jinu was worried inwardly as well. Now, normally, he would never try to take on any unnecessary risk. Not only did he lack the abilities to do so, but he was also not brave enough to. However, Jinu had a younger sister who was about to become a university student in the coming months. I've no money saved up. Currently, Jinu was 24 years old. He was at an age where he should be concentrating on his academic pursuits, but he gave up on that dream because, well, he had no money. He sure as heck didn't want his little sister to go through the same sacrifice, the same pain as he did. Right now, every cent was precious to him. It wasn't only Mr. Park who needed a big score today. Jinu raised his hand up high. I vote for going ahead. It was then he heard a soft sigh of resignation coming from his side. Part 2. The Dual Dungeon. The passageway went on and on forever. In front, Mr. Song and other strong hunters had taken the lead. Song had summoned a small flame on top of his palm to illuminate the way forward. Mr. Kim asked him as he walked alongside Song.
We've walked really far, haven't we? Shouldn't we consider the time we need to escape from here as well?
How long have we been walking? Kim looked at his wristwatch.
Around 40 minutes. The gate shuts down completely 1 hour after the boss is killed, so we have a window of 20 minutes left or so.
If we can't see the boss in the next 20 minutes, I suggest we should oh wait, this is still Kim.
A gate shuts down completely 1 hour after the boss is killed, so we should have a window of 20 minutes left or so. If we can't see the boss in the next 20 minutes, I suggest we should just give up.
I guess so. Song nodded his head for a while, before pointing to his back with his thumb.
Mr. Kim, it's dark out in front, so why don't you position yourself behind me?
Kim stared at Song's flames for a second or two, before he wordlessly pulled out his smartphone and switched on the screen. And then the passageway got illuminated rather brightly. Song alternated his gaze between his flame and the smartphone, before he too wordlessly began searching for his own phone. The very back of the group was a spot reserved for Sung Jinu, who was injured pretty badly not too long ago, and Jui, who didn't possess any combat skills whatsoever. Jinu scratched the back of his neck. Pardon me, I'm really sorry.
About what?
About, dragging you here against your wishes.
I'm fine with it, so you don't need to mind me.
Jinu cautiously studied Jui's expression. She definitely did not look fine at all. Jinu tilted his head this way and that, while trying to read her mood better, before he asked her again, even more cautious than before. Are you really fine? That prompted Jui to shift her gaze towards him.
Of course I'm not. Are you of a sane mind? If you were stabbed a couple of inches higher, you'd have a hole in your heart right by now. And what about those injuries on your arms and legs? I worked so hard to heal you somehow, yet you wish to throw yourself into yet another dungeon? Plus, you don't even know where we're going, too.
She spoke so quickly that Jinu felt like his mind was getting numb from hearing her. However, she was right about everything. If it weren't for the presence of the outstanding healer rank B Yi Jui, Jinu wouldn't have been able to carry on living unaffected, never mind working as a hunter. It was a small wonder why such high-ranked and hard-to-find healers were valued so greatly within the halls of the association. Wait, now that I think about it, I owe Miss Jui a lot, don't I? Jui was a healer-type hunter, a rarest of the rare breeds. Not only that, she was a genius ranked at B as well. The association always asked her to heal the injured hunters whenever a gate opened up, and whenever Jinu participated in a raid, he'd almost always end up sitting down next to her.
Are you in pain? Please hold on for a little while longer.
Haven't I seen you before? By any chance, are you the person from the last time?
You're injured again?
It's like we're running into each other quite often nowadays, isn't it?
You said that your name is Mr. Jinu. Well, is it going to be all right?
Maybe, this life of a hunter...
Maybe, this life of a hunter doesn't really suit you. You're here again?
Also, all these moments is literally of Jui running into Jin the whole time.
Are you in pain? Please hold it for a little while longer. Haven't I seen you before? By any chance, are you the person from the last time? You're injured again? It's like we're running into each other quite often nowadays, isn't it? You said that your name was Mr. Jinu? Well, is it going to be all right? Maybe, this life of a hunter doesn't really suit you. You're here again? Show me your arm. No, not that one. Use bandages on that arm. I meant the other one with the bone fracture.
At the moment, it was way past the point of Jinu feeling grateful for everything she had done, and firmly into the territory of him being apologetic for inconveniencing her. When Jinu looked dispirited, Jui also felt a bit bad about scolding him just now, and her attitude softened up considerably.
You're really sorry?
Yes, I am. Jui fell into a deep contemplation for a bit, before she began gazing at him with the corner of her eyes and her lips slowly arched up.
If you're really sorry then, how about you buy me dinner sometime?
Now that was a totally unexpected offer. Jinu looked at her with an expression of surprise and found a teasing smile etched on her face like a teenage girl. A teen girl, huh? The truth was, Jui was still a young girl who had barely entered her 20s. Didn't she say that she'd be 21 next year? If her long hair was replaced with something shorter, and her current attire was swapped out for a school uniform, she'd completely look like high school senior. His wandering mind pictured the image of Jui in a school uniform, and his face reddened up somewhat. When Jinu hesitated with his answer, Jui's cheeks began puffing out like a balloon.
What did you don't want to buy me dinner?
It happened, right then. Suddenly it became quite hectic out in front.
We found it! It's the boss chamber!
Jinu and Jui's gazes automatically shifted to the front, and they saw a huge stone door blocking the passage. Hunters immediately surrounded this door. What is this? Why is there a door at the end of the cavern?
Have we ever encountered a boss chamber with a door before?
This is definitely the first time. I'm sure of it. Doesn't this feel strangely dangerous? Hunters began to express their doubts and fears one at a time. Since their own lives were on the line here, they had to be cautious and meticulous. However, if one were to become too cautious, one would end up failing to grasp the heaven-sent opportunity in the first place. Heaven-sent, huh? Mr. Song figured this was one such case. Are you all planning to return empty-handed after coming this far? Song placed his hands on the door. If that's what you want, knock yourselves out. I'm pushing ahead, even if it means I'm going alone. Song was a rank C hunter with 10 years of experience. If it weren't for his age, which was over 60, he'd be making a killing in a big guild by now thanks to his excellent skills. And when a hunter like that voiced his opinion with such confidence, others began to feel less anxious than before. Wait a minute. A couple of hunters began recalling rumors of dual dungeons. I heard that there were incredible treasures hidden within dual dungeons. Sorry, yawned. Yeah, I heard that there's a certain small to medium guild found a dual dungeon and grew into a large guild almost overnight. Monsters inside the dungeon always possess roughly the similar ranks no matter where they are located, so the hunt itself should not be too difficult. Don't worry, I won't do too many accents all at once. What if there were incredible treasures hidden within the dual dungeon, just as the rumors said, and the monsters beyond this door were about the same difficulty as the rank D and E creatures they fought until now? I can't let that old man monopolize all the treasure. No freaking way. Postnatal care, the school fee for the firstborn kid, and let's not forget, this month's rent is almost due, too. The opinions of the hunters were now on the same page. Jinnu, too, steeled himself. I can't return home with just a single rank E magic crystal. At bare minimum, I gotta kill a rank D. No, one more rank E monster. Treasures or rare loot found in a... It didn't even have to be a monster, too. If it's treasure ahead instead, I am getting flipped around because I saw D-Train showed up. Good to see you, D-Train. We are currently on chapter 2 of the light novel. So buckle up, because it's going to be a bit of a long one. I can't return home with just a single rank E magic crystal. At a bare minimum, I gotta kill a rank D. No, one more rank E monster. It didn't even have to be a monster, too. If it's treasure instead... Treasures or rare loot found in a dungeon would normally be divided equally among all the participants in a raid. It was quite a different way of sharing the rewards where one could only take possession of magic crystals one procured by themselves. If we score big today, then things might improve at home. For a while. Jinnu nervously swallowed down his saliva. Jui saw his determined expression and asked him,
Is this how the expression of someone who's a hunter as a hobby looks like?
Jinnu shrugged his shoulders.
Who'd bet their lives in their main line of profession nowadays?
Oh wait, this is Jin. Who'd bet their lives in their main line of profession nowadays? Unless it's a hobby, obviously.
Eh?
Just as a dumbfounded expression formed on Jui's face, Song pushed the dungeon's door, and it creaked open. There must have been some sort of mechanism installed on the heavy-looking door, since the physical strength of a 60-year-old man was enough to easily open it. Slam! Now that the door was wide open, the huge open interior revealed itself. Hunters hurriedly rushed in.
Let's go in as well.
Jinnu feared that he'd fall behind, so he grasped Jui's hand and took the lead. Oh wait, this is Jin saying this. Let's go in as well. Jinnu feared that he'd fall behind, so he grasped Jui's hand and took the lead.
Ah!
Jui's face reddened slightly as she followed after him. As soon as the hunters set foot inside, flames erupted on the numerous torches packed tightly on the walls all at the same time. Thanks to that, the interior brightened up considerably. What the heck? The lights came on by themselves.
First time seeing a dungeon like this one.
Something's different about this place. Hunters cautiously studied their surroundings. The overall atmosphere of the place was similar to that of an ancient temple. Not only that, an old and somewhat decrepit temple, something that might be buried and hidden beneath the ground. Moss and weed could be seen sporadically on the floor, walls, and the ceiling. Several hunters shrunk back and shuddered slightly. It's a bit creepy in here, isn't it?
Doesn't it feel like we're being watched by someone?
Leaving behind the scared hunters, the 3-4 strongest of the group went in deeper.
Tch,
Don't say anything that might jinx us, will ya? Don't say something that might jinx us, will ya?
Let's get this quickly. Let's end this quickly and go home.
The interior was nonsensically huge. The chamber was shaped like a giant dome. It was as large as several Olympic stadiums, the one found in Seoul, were put together. No, maybe it was even bigger than that. However, one couldn't help but feel that it was still inadequate. The reason for that was rather obvious.
That thing over there. No freaking way, that thing's the boss, right?
In the deepest part of the dome, something so logic-defyingly humongous sat on a throne just as big as itself. It was none other than a huge stone statue of a god.
Oh my god.
Wow. Shocked gasps leaked out from the hunters. The first image popping up in Jinu's head was of the Statue of Liberty in New York. If that statue sat down on a chair, wouldn't it be as big as that statue of the unknown god? Well, Liberty was a woman, while the one sitting on the throne was a dude, though.
No, hang on. Maybe it's even bigger than that.
Hunters began nervously swallowing their saliva near the foot of the god statue. Wow. So it was called the god statue in the light novel, and I called it the god statue when I was reacting to the manhwa. And I didn't even know it, but that's literally what it's called here in the manhwa. Looks like I was on track the whole time. The taut and heavy apprehension and anxiety were clear to see on their faces as they worried about this statue being the dungeon's boss. However, the statue did not budge an inch. What a fortunate thing that was. Even Song spat out a sigh of relief.
Okay, everyone, spread out.
Now that they found some leeway, hunters split among themselves and began searching around the vicinity.
I don't think there's a single monster in here.
You think so too? Never mind a monster, I can't even see a single bug, too. The chamber of the stone god statue might have been massive, yet its actual inner structure was on the simpler side. On the walls, countless torches could be found there, and in front of these walls, more stone statues slightly taller than a human being stood tall and unmoving. There were lots of them here as well, found at a certain distance from one another. They all seem rather beautiful, aren't they?
It's like they're works of art, no?
Objects held by each of the stone statues were varied and different. Some held weapons. There was one with a book. Some carried magical instruments, and even torches.
It's as if they are like statues of a holy temple or something. They are like statues of a holy temple or something.
Song finished what Kim wanted to say. Then Song found something beneath his feet.
Isn't this a magic formation?
He found a magic formation that he had never seen before located in the middle of this temple. It was then.
Excuse me? Mr. Song? Something's written here. Can you come over here and take a look?
One of the hunters discovered a statue that was different from others and called out to Song. Song stopped studying the magic formation and got up from the floor. Other hunters all gathered around the statue Song was headed off to. Only this statue featured a pair of wings and carried a stone slate. What the hunters focused on was the letters carved into this slate. Song took a sweeping look at the slate and muttered to no one in particular.
It's rune alphabet. The rune alphabet.
Words that could not be found anywhere on Earth and found only within dungeons. Only the hunters who had awakened the magic-related professions could decipher them.
The laws of the Continuum Temple.
Song read the very first verse. With a deeply nervous face, Jinu listened to the contents of the slate as read out by Mr. Song. However, someone suddenly tugged at his arm. When he looked back, he spotted Jui and her deathly pale complexion. That concludes Chapter 2. Onwards to Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Jui's complexion was incredibly poor. Sung Jinu was deeply taken aback by this sight. "What's wrong? Are you ill somewhere?"
There. Over there.
Jinu's eyes followed Jui's trembling, pointing finger. She was pointing at the giant god statue. More specifically, she was pointing at the god statue's face. Jinu could only tilt his head in confusion because it looked pretty much the same as before. Jui stuttered some words out.
The eyes. The eyes of the god statue moved towards us. Just now.
"Pardon me?" Jinu looked again several times, but nothing seemed to have changed. There was no visible change to the god statue. I'm sure you've made a mistake." However, it seemed like Jui didn't fear him. Her head stayed lowered, and as she held onto Jinu's arm, her entire body trembled even harder. I said something wrong, didn't I? However, it seemed like Jui didn't hear him. Her head stayed lowered, and as she held onto Jinu's arm, her entire body trembled even harder. Yeah, I think I read that sentence wrong. My apologies. Let's keep going. Hang on a sec here. Even Jinu picked up on this strange but ominous sensation now. The world was eerily quiet. So much so it felt just bizarre. No sounds? Even the sounds of the flames burning on the torches could not be heard anymore. First law. In the meantime, Song's voice continued on as he read the contents of the slate. Worship the god. Second law. Exalt the god. Third law. Prove your piety. Those who do not keep to these laws shall not leave this place alive. It was then. Slam! Everyone was jolted back to their senses at the sudden explosion of noise. What was that? Where did that sudden noise come from? I don't think they talked about the rune alphabet. I think that wasn't even a thing. They just automatically read it. Or it just had like a short explanation, but I don't think they really dived into it in the manhwa. What was that? Where did that sudden noise come from? The first person to notice the change in the situation was none other than Jinu, because his senses were running at full tilt already. He could tell where the noise was coming from. The door! The door is closed! As soon as Jinu shouted out, everyone shifted their gazes towards the doorway. The door they left open was now firmly shut close. Darn it, I can't stand this! As you know, I don't use profanity, so if people use profanity throughout this story, I will supplement it for something else completely family-friendly. Darn it, I can't stand this! The hunter who was the first to oppose the idea of continued exploration of the dungeon began spitting out cusses as he took large strides towards the door. I'm going home, so you all can have fun with a boss or treasures or whatever! That hunter glared at Song with an expression that contained all of his dissatisfaction before he spun his head around and angrily grabbed the door handle. It happened then. Song's eyes grew extra large. No! Splash! The area around the hunter's neck suddenly vanished. The headless body powerlessly collapsed to the ground. Hunters began screaming their heads off. The stone statue that smashed a human's head apart with a steel mace returned to its original spot next to the door, as if nothing important had happened, its body completely covered in fresh blood. That thing can move? What the heck? Does that mean every statue in here can move too?
We gotta fight against these things?
I couldn't even see that darn thing swing the mace, so how can I? Unlike others here, though, Jinnu knew the truth. Their troubles only had just begun. Didn't Jui say it earlier?
The eyes. The eyes of the god statue moved towards us. Just now.
If what she said is true, a chill rapidly ran down his spine. Jinnu forced his stiff neck to turn around so he could look behind him. Oh crap. The stone statue of the god was looking down at him. Part 3. Commencement of the attack. It was then the god statue's 2 black eyes changed to red. Was this the instincts of a hunter? No. The instincts of a living being were sending out urgent warning signals. Something was coming. Something none of them could contend with. Jinnu turned towards the other hunters and cried out as loudly as he could, "Get down!" Almost at the same time, red beams of light shot out from the eyes of the god statue. Jinnu hugged Jui and threw their bodies to the floor. Bzzz. The beam shot right by the spot Jinnu had been standing. 1/10 of a second. No, he survived by 1/100th of a second. That was definitely too close for comfort. Unfortunately, not everyone was as lucky as Jinnu. Those who were swallowed up by the red light evaporated where they stood. Only the ashes of what used to be human hunters remained where the beams flew past. The screams came not from the dead hunters, but those who witnessed their final moments from the sidelines, actually. What the heck was that?
How can such a thing even be?
Ravi, it's good to see you. We are currently on Chapter 3 of the light novel. Only 7 more to go. Well, for today's reading. The remaining hunters began freaking out. Out of the 17 hunters, only 11 survived. Not one of them had ever experienced such a powerful attack before in their lives. I barely made it because he told me to get down. If it wasn't for Mr. Sung's shouts. Hunters stared at Jinnu while nervously swallowing their saliva. Jinnu turned out to be their unlikely savior. Without his timely warning, they could only imagine what would have happened to them, and that thought sent chills down their spines. While still lying prostrate on the ground, Jinnu glared at the god statue. Its eyes were still glowing in red, but it did not attack again. Is the attack over? Jinnu looked underneath him. The scared silly Jui was trembling in his arms. This was the reason why she worked for the association and not for a big guild, and participated in simple raids like this one, even though she was nominally an excellent hunter with a rank as high as B. Jui's breathing was getting rougher by the second. He couldn't let her be like this. He had to do something. Jinnu was about to raise his body up, thinking that he gotta do something here, but then someone grabbed his shoulders and pushed him back down hard.
Don't get up!
It was Mr. Song, somehow next to the youth before anyone had noticed it. Jinnu was flustered, but still did as he was told. Song then shouted at the other hunters,
Nobody move! Stay exactly where you are!
Song looked around before focusing on Jinnu.
Only those that moved got killed. Those who listened to you and got down survived.
It seems that way. Song tilted his head slightly.
I thought you warned us because you figured something out.
No, well, I just felt something dangerous was coming, so... A flash of light brushed past Song's eyes just then. His instincts are good.
His instincts are pretty good. In other words, he's a ranky hunter. If only his abilities were a bit higher.
Just as Song stared at Jinnu with a rueful expression, Jinnu too found a little bit of leeway to check out the old hunter's condition. And the youth's eyes opened wider after finding something pretty terrible.
Uh, your, your, your arm.
This is nothing. I can still hold on.
But still.
Jinu swallowed down his saliva. Song's other hand that wasn't pressing down on Jinu's shoulder, his left arm, was gone. Song studied Jui's condition for a bit before he took off the t-shirt he was wearing, and while not even showing the enormous amount of pain he must be feeling, he wrapped up what was left of his left arm.
Help me tie up the end, please. It's difficult to so with only one hand.
I feel like it's supposed to say it's difficult to do so.
It's difficult to do so with only one hand.
I'm reading here from Tapas, and it feels like there are some words missing, so I may fill those in when I read, just so you know.
It's difficult to do so with only one hand.
Jinu could only nod his head then. They were able to somehow stop the bleeding for now. Rather than a scream or a pained moan, Song let out a long sigh. It was a sigh containing 10 years' worth of experience as a hunter. Now that the first aid was over, Song's gaze became a level sharper as he studied his surroundings. Although the god statue stopped attacking them, their situation hadn't improved in the slightest. And like so, seconds continued to tick by.
Just why do we have to suffer like this?
A few hunters even began shedding tears now.
We can't stay like this forever.
The patience of the other hunters was running out as well. Jinu agreed with that sentiment, though. Right, we can't stay here forever. But what could he possibly do here? If Song's suspicion was correct, then the moment they moved, they'd get attacked. And even if they got lucky and managed to evade the beams and reach the door, there were the 2 stone statues guarding the doorway to worry about after all. They were a big problem too, actually. The movements of the doorkeepers were so fast that he couldn't see it with his eyes. Could he or anyone else open the door and escape before those statues attacked them? Ah, you're gonna watch this tomorrow during work. I see. Well, if it isn't the consequences of their own actions. Heh, yep. Could he or anyone else open the door and escape before those statues attacked them? It sounded completely impossible, which meant that the annihilation of the hunters was just a matter of time. Wait, a matter of time? When his thoughts arrived there, a strong sense of disharmony filled him up. An event that couldn't have happened, but it happened anyway. But no one else seemed to have picked up on it yet. Something. We've missed something. Without a doubt, the answer to their salvation hid in that something. It was then. "Don't move!" Song shouted at Mr. Ju, who was at the far end of the group. "Shut up! Who knows when that thing will start attacking us again? But you want me to stay here and wait?" Mr. Ju was a close combat type hunter. These types of hunters possess far, far superior physical abilities than regular human beings. On top of this, Ju was about to sign up with a big guild after his skills were acknowledged by them not too long ago as well. I'll not die here today. While keeping low to the ground, Ju put all his strength down to his legs. His aim was at the doorway. The muscles on his legs were swelling up fast. Darn it. Song could only mutter out to himself. Right then, Ju kicked the ground and exploded forward. Meanwhile, Jinu hurriedly turned his head to look at the god statue. Just as he suspected, the eyes of the statue were fixed on the back of Mr. Ju. And then, the chilling red rays shot out from those eyes. Bzzz! The beam slammed on the back of Mr. Ju. The female hunter screamed at the top of her lungs. She must have developed a leak because a puddle of yellow liquid formed where she was squatting on the ground. I feel like this may be a bit descriptive in certain situations, I'm just saying. The expressions of the hunters froze hard. Oh my god. Mr. Jew no longer stood where the red beam flew past. Only the pair of ownerless ankles could be seen now. One of the men with a weaker constitution began emptying the contents of his stomach. Jinu's expression also crumpled as well. As expected, the god statue could easily finish them off if it felt like it. It'd be easier than stepping on squirming bugs, actually. If that's the case, then why hadn't it? It could kill them, yet it hadn't done that. This was a completely different pattern of behavior compared to the monsters that attacked as soon as spotting human hunters in their vicinity. Pardon me, just yawning. These statues only moved if certain conditions were met. The doorkeepers that only attacked if someone approached the door. The eyes of the god statue firing that beam if someone moved. It was like a game with a set regulation. Hang on. Could there be some kind of rules in this chamber? It was here that a piece of puzzle found its place in Jinu's head. He began recalling the contents of the stone slate Song was reading not too long ago. That was why. The laws of the Karu Tenin Temple, was it? Regulations was rules, and rules could be laws as well. The key to their safe escape from this chamber had to be buried within those warnings found on the stone slate. Worship the god. That was the first law.
Did you just say something?
Song shifted his gaze back to Jinu. Instead of a reply, Jinu simply placed his index finger on his lips. It was a sign asking for a bit of time to think. If my thoughts were right. Jinu slowly rose up. Song hurriedly tried to stop the youth, but Jinu shook his head while carrying a determined expression.
Doesn't look like he gave up on living.
Song nodded his head. Jinu kept his eyes trained squarely at the god statue and carefully stood up. Almost right away, the eyes of the statue were fixed on Jinu. Bzzz! As expected, the red beam was fired in his direction. If he got down to the ground a moment slower, it'd be his face melting away instead of a few strands of hair on top of his head. Lying face down on the ground, Jinu breathed in and out quite heavily. He nearly died just then. The moment the statue's eyes met his, he thought he was going to die for sure. He somehow did dodge it, but his legs wouldn't stop shaking from the fear. Still, he learned something important just now. It's not attacking someone who's moving around. As long as he was squatting low to the ground, he could go anywhere he wanted and the statue's eyes would remain still. However, if one stood up, then the red beam would be fired without hesitation. The darn thing only attacks if we reach a certain height! That was why Jinu bet his life on proving this theory right just now. And now, he was sure of it. The meaning behind the first law, that was. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 3. Onwards to Chapter 4. Part 4, Chapter 4, Part 4, The Three Laws. Jinu shouted out towards the rest of the hunters. Everyone! Their attention shifted towards him in an instant. Jinu spoke as he met their gazes. You must kowtow towards the god statue! Hunters began tilting their heads after hearing him. Kowtow? You want us to kowtow to that statue? Hunters exchanged glances with each other before loudly cussing out at Jin. Yeah, I can't say some of these words. Screw you, what crap are you spewing here?
What the heck? How can you say something like that under the current circumstance?
Have you lost your mind, Sung Jinu? Kim's face became boiling red as he began snorting like a bull.
I have no idea you, Mr. Sung, would be like this. If I could move, then I'd have punched you in the face already.
Jinu bit on his lower lip. 6 of their comrades were killed by the god statue. So, it was rather obvious that the surviving hunters would cuss him out when he told them to kowtow towards that abominable thing. Somehow doesn't match up to the book you have. I am reading this from Tapas. The same place that publishes new chapters. And this is the novel. Not unless some things were changed in the paperbacks, which would make this even the more confusing. Hold on, let me check something here. Chapter 3. Hold on. Give me a sec here. I'm checking on chapter 3. Yeah, these are the official chapters. So, I'm gonna keep reading. It might be different for your paperbacks because you have the physical copies of the novel, right, Kitty? So it might be different because one good example is that the paperbacks of One Punch Man are not the same as the pages in the manga online. So there is a bit of a dissonance there. But let me get back to it. Let's get back to it and let's get re-immersed back in with the story. Sorry for that short break, everybody. 6 of their comrades were killed by the god statue, so it was rather obvious that the surviving hunters would cuss him out when he told them to kowtow towards that abominable thing. It wasn't hard to understand what these hunters were feeling at the moment. And the most important thing was he had no logical evidence to back his theory up. He only had his gut feeling. Indeed, that was the only way to describe it. However,
I'll do as you say.
That voice came from Jinu's back. Everyone's eyes immediately shifted there. It was Mr. Song, effectively the leader of this group.
Mr. Song? You're gonna kowtow to that freaking statue?
Just as other hunters began to freak out, Song looked straight at Jinu.
Young man, you've discovered something, haven't you?
Jinu resolutely nodded his head.
Is it your instinct again?
Yes, for the time being. Just now, 11 people survived thanks to Jinu's instincts. Well, with the death of Mr. Ju, there were 10 now. But still, if it was Jinu's instincts, then wouldn't it be worth believing it at least once more? T-Bait novel is different on Tapas as well. There will be minor differences in the paperback. Okay, just thought. That's what I thought. Yes, you have the official paperback, but I like this. It's like reading it again for the first time. Ah, thank you. With the death of Mr. Ju, there were 10 now, but still, if it was Jinu's instincts, then wouldn't it be worth believing it at least once more? That's what Song thought. When Song knelt down and kowtowed towards the god statue, the mood had become sullen and silent.
He's really doing it!
Seizing upon this opportunity, Jinnu shouted out once more. Everyone, I beg of you, please kneel before the god statue. We might be able to get out of here alive. Might live. Might be able to get out alive. The impact those simple words carried was quite explosive. We might live? We could get out of here? With just one kowtow? The hesitant hunters began to plop down to the ground, as if they were really kowtowing. The number of them performing the act gradually increased. In the end, even the complaining Kim bowed his head towards the statue. However, there was no visible change to the god statue. Instead, those chilling red lights still shone from the eyes of the statue. Jinnu felt his heart go cold. Was I wrong? It was here that his gaze shifted to Jui next to him. No matter how generous one was, it was difficult to describe her position of squatting on the ground, shivering, while holding her head in her hands as her kowtowing. What if... Jinnu carefully grasped Jui's wrist. She raised her head like a scared cat. Seeing her, Jinnu wordlessly nodded his head. Only then did she relax her muscles somewhat. With that, Jinnu was able to slowly change her posture. Done. There was only one person remaining now, and that would be him. Jinnu knelt down towards the god statue, placed his hands on the ground, and slowly lowered his head. Finally, something began to change. Huh? Hunters who had noticed the change first raised their voices. The god statue! Look at the statue! Its eyes! The red light buzzing in its eyes was gradually weakening. What the heck? Is this really going to work? Eventually, the red light completely vanished. Oh! Hunters began rejoicing loudly. The red light is gone! We made it! The excited hunters began standing up one at a time. Even then, the statue didn't fire the red beam. Jinnu belatedly raised his head and spat out a sigh of relief. Whew. Just as he suspected, this chamber operated strictly within the set regulations. If that's the case, then this game was far from over. 2 more laws still remained. The second law, exalt the god, and the third law, prove one's piety. It was then. Rumble. Accompanied by a goosebump-inducing sound, the entire chamber began to shake. Jinnu's expression hardened immediately. As I thought, his suspicions proved to be correct once more. Things were only getting started. The humongous god statue was slowly rising up from the stone throne. Huh? Hunters were hugging each other while shedding tears of joy until then, but when they realized this turn of events, they all froze up like statues themselves. What? What the heck? It wasn't over yet? This can't be. None of them could articulate what they wanted to say. Despair rapidly dyed their expressions. Soon, the god statue completely stood up from the throne. The creature swept its gaze around once and began walking towards the hunters. Thud! Every time the god statue stepped on the ground, the whole world seemed to shake. Thud! It was so tall that its head was almost scraping against the chamber's indescribably high ceiling. Thud! Even when the hunters were overwhelmed by the statue's sheer size, the thing was gradually closing its distance to them. Mr. Sung! Mr. Sung Jinnu!
What can we do?
The hunters who were cursing at Jinnu only a short while ago hurriedly began crowding around him. Is there a way out of this?
Say something!
All these adults were forming tearful expressions as if they'd start breaking down in tears and wailing very soon. Currently, Jinnu was their only hope. Jinnu helped the frozen stiff Jui up from the ground and began talking about the second law. Exalt the god. That's the key.
Wait, it isn't that...
Kim suddenly butted in as if he knew something others didn't. Isn't that what's written on the slate?
Correct. Worship the god. Exalt the god.
Oh wait, this is Jin going, correct. Worship the god, exalt the god, and finally prove your piety. We need to satisfy all 3 laws. Jinnu began speaking faster and faster. Why? Why? The god statue was already a stone's throw away from them.
Thud!
Everyone's complexion paled as the giant shadow loomed over them.
Let me try something.
A young male hunter who usually kept to himself suddenly took a step forward. What are you trying to do? I've been in a church choir. I'm confident if it's about exalting something. The young hunter slowly stepped towards the statue while disregarding the dissuasion of Kim. He regulated his breathing while looking up to the god statue before he took a large gulp of air. I come to you, Lord. His clear voice began reverberating within the chamber. Renew my faith once more. Bless me with your grace, Lord. The statue stopped its march in front of the singing hunter. Oh! Hunters began gasping out in elation. The god statue didn't move from the spot as if it was absorbed by the singing. All the other noises in the room vanished. Only the young man's voice could be heard in the chamber's interior. The young hunter was encouraged by this and carried on. All the weakness found in me, through your love I shall overcome. Among the hunters, only Sung Jinnu was shuddering from this ominous sensation filling him up. This is wrong. Jinnu swallowed up his words several times. The chamber featured its own set of rules, but the young hunter was exalting the god statue with the rule of Christianity, not with the rules of this chamber. Thankfully, the statue wasn't moving, but could singing that hymn qualify as upholding the rules? Jinnu shook his head. The only reason why he didn't say anything was solely because he couldn't think of a better way to stop the god statue himself. It was then. Thud! The weighty noise reverberated throughout the chamber. The female hunter screamed at the top of her lungs. When the stone statue lifted its leg up, a bloody mess of what used to be the young hunter could be found on the ground as well as on the bottom of its foot. Other hunters began screaming in panic and shock, too. Ah! Ah! The face of the statue, emotionless until then, was now crumpled in pure rage. Nightbot says it's time for me to hydrate. Perfect timing. All right, there we go. The face of the statue, emotionless until then, was now crumpled in pure rage. It's angry! Run!
Run away!
Hunters dispersed away from the statue in a hurry. Unfortunately for the female hunter, she lost her reasoning and stood on the spot while screaming loudly after personally witnessing the death of the young hunter. Dang it! Jinnu was running away while carrying Jui in his arms, but he turned around so he could go and help that woman out. But then Song stopped the youth. But
It's too late.
As if slapping a fly down, the god statue slammed its palm down on the female hunter.
Slam!
Jinnu inadvertently shifted his gaze away. It was a truly gruesome sight, and he couldn't bear to watch it unfold.
There's no time to waste like this. Are you planning to let this girl die too?
Song's words sobered Jinnu up in an instant. It was as he said.
Thud! Thud! Thud!
Help me! The statue was not walking around anymore. No, it was actually running around and stepping on the humans it found nearby. Whenever the thing stepped on the ground, the entire chamber shook around. Hard.
Thud! Thud!
Jinnu gritted his teeth and began running again. Jui squeezed her eyes shut and held on to him for her dear life.
Let's split up.
Yes! Thinking that moving around together was dangerous, Jinnu and Song ran in separate directions. Jinnu made sure to run towards the furthest corner from the frenzied god statue. However, there was another hunter who had arrived there before he did. It was Mr. Park. Park was running with everything he had. Tears formed on the edges of his eyes when he recalled his family. Back home, a son who resembled him so much and a wife pregnant with their second child was waiting for him. He couldn't die here. Not like this. Perhaps because he ran with everything he had, he was able to run the furthest away from the statue out of everyone here. As Park tried to control his heavy breathing in the corner, his friend Kim urgently shouted at him.
Mr. Park!
Park raised his head after hearing the familiar voice.
Yeah?
Kim pointed at the spot behind Park and cried out,
You're back! Look out behind you!
It was then something sharp gleamed coldly behind Mr. Park.
Slice.
Park was sliced in half from the top of his head right down to his groin. His cleanly cut two halves fell to the ground.
Park!
The stone statue that killed Park with its great sword returned to its position as if nothing had happened, exactly how the doorkeeper did before. Kim began tearing up after witnessing this scene.
You sons of...
Well, I can't continue that statement.
Thud! Thud!
Behind him, the humongous god statue was stepping on and killing humans one at a time. And if you ran towards the corner in order to avoid it, then the stone statues located there would start attacking you.
Ah!
My arm! My arm! The interior of the chamber swiftly fell into chaos. Cold sweat dripped down from Jinnu's forehead. His legs were getting heavier. His breathing was getting rougher and rougher. However, his head was filled with only one chain of thought. Exalt the god. Exalt the god. Exalt the god. The words of the second law circulated in his brain nonstop. The key to unraveling this mystery definitely existed within this chamber. Something within this chamber that they could use. However, when the hunters first entered this place, they had searched every nook and cranny, but didn't find a single contraption or things that might be some kind of tools. No, back then or now, the only things here that can move are the stone statues. It was then. A thought raced past Jinnu's brain just then. Only things moving in here are the statues? Dang it! Jinnu's eyes widened. Why haven't I thought of that before? If the one thing that could move were the stone statues, then the one thing he could use had to be them. Had to be them too. These statues activated when humans got near them, meaning he had to take advantage of this rule. What if... Even though he was running short of breath, Jinu roared out loud enough to shake the entire chamber.
Run towards the statues holding musical instruments!
And that is the end of chapter 4. Onwards to chapter 5. We are now officially halfway through. Chapter 5. All the hunters still alive heard Jinu's voice. Huh? Instruments? A ray of hope found its way into the eyes of the hunters. Quite different to back when he told them to kowtow, everyone moved unbelievably quickly. If Jinu was wrong about this, then as soon as arriving near one, they would be killed by the stone statues holding the musical instruments. However, no one here questioned Jinu's words. Song was the first one to arrive in front of a statue carrying an instrument. Silence. Song controlled his heavy breathing and raised his head to look at the statue. And as if it was a lie, the fingers of the statue moved and strummed on the harp. A beautiful melody flowed out.
It's working! Hurry to the statues with instruments!
Hunters ran towards the nearest correct statues in hurried footsteps. The statue with the trumpet began blowing it triumphantly. Only one with a flute began playing with it. The one holding the lyre strummed on its strings. While sensing the approach of his physical limit, Kim somehow arrived in front of the statue that held a bazooka, and plopped down on the ground. TL, I didn't know what this bazooka could be. TL is from the Raw, ED, editor, note, or editor, whatever. Probably either a bazooka or bozuki, both from the 1900s. Tiring. Tring. As soon as the statue began playing the instrument, the god statue stopped chasing after Kim. He must have been overcome with emotions because Kim then began shedding tears while he stayed on his knees. And he's just crying this whole time. Meanwhile, the god statue turned around. The creature searched around and soon enough found its next prey. Oh, dang it. Jinu spat out a cuss as his gaze met the god statues. Thank you. Thank you for the heads up there, kitty. Like I said, if I see words I'm unfamiliar with because I don't know Korean, I am just gonna fill them in with words that I think correlate with the sentence and just avoid cursing altogether. So I appreciate the heads up. Thank you for that. Jinu spat out a cuss as his gaze met the god statues. He then began running hard, so hard that his heart might explode. His back was already soaked through in sweat. Why isn't it working? Jinu's resentful glare landed on the stone statue in front of him. The statue holding a drum showed no signs of moving at all. Thud! 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 The god statue closed in with frightening speed. He was practically on the other side of the chamber from the darn thing. Yet the distance between the two shortened in no time at all. Jinu swallowed down his saliva. Could it be that the statue won't play because there are two people here? Me and Miss Jui? He couldn't think of anything else. Why? Because other statues were playing music just fine as soon as the hunter stood in front of them. There's no time to think anymore! Jinu put Jui down and got ready to run to somewhere else.
Mr. Wu.
Still terrified out of her mind, Jui clung on to Jinu's sleeve. Jinu calmly whispered in her ear, We'll both die if we stay together. Tears began forming on Jui's eyes. Her fingers trembled as they held on to his clothes. Unfortunately, there was no time to explain to her in detail. Jinu carefully pried her hand away and began running in the opposite direction as hard as he could. Boom, boom, boom. When he glanced back, the statue behind Jui began beating its drum in a slow but steady rhythm. What a relief. There was only one thing remaining now, to run to the other statue without getting killed. Only Janu hadn't received the protection of the music-playing statues. Quite obviously, the rage of the god statue was solely directed to Janu and him alone. Janu did his best to avoid the foot of the thing that rivaled the building in size and crossed the room in a hurry. Thud! Thud! He fell and rolled around, but still, he somehow managed to avoid getting flattened by the god statue's foot. He might only have been a rank E, but he was still a close combat type hunter, so his physique came in handy in situations like this. Just a bit further! A bit more! Jinu kept an eye on the god statue's movements and ran even harder. His speed increased, and when the distance remaining between him and the stone statue was a mere dozen feet. No, that's the wrong one!
No, that's the wrong one!
Mr. Song cried out to him. Jinu had been paying attention to the god statue only. He was stunned by the shout and hurriedly turned his head to take a look at his front. There are some gaps for grammar and words that are kind of missing from this. It's not a statue with an instrument? He belatedly realized that the thing that looked like a musical instrument from afar was actually a shield instead. And sure enough, the statue mercilessly stabbed down with its shield. Jinu hurriedly threw himself to the side. Ah! Ah! Oh, it is him just screaming out. Ah! Oh, wait, that's actually Jui. Ah! Jui screamed. Jinu rolled on the ground, and when he came to a stop, he raised his head to see the god statue standing right in front of his nose. It's one thing after another. His forehead must have been torn from him rolling on the ground because blood was flowing down and blurred his vision. His view was restricted, and he couldn't look too far away. Jinu quickly searched around his vicinity. An instrument! An instrument! However, no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't see a single statue holding an instrument nearby. Meanwhile, the god statue raised his head over Jinu's position. Thud! Jinu threw himself again and somehow avoided the foot of the statue again. But he had reached his limit. A powerful dizziness was assaulting him, and for some reason, he couldn't even balance himself. Please. If there was a real god, he thought that he'd start praying right about now. It was then Jinu spotted a stone statue that held neither a weapon or a musical instrument. Is that? Jinu decided to bet everything on that statue. He crawled on the ground and arrived in front of the statue in question. He then managed to flip his body around and lie down on the ground so he could see the god statue. He no longer had any energy to move. Jinu stared at the approaching god statue and continued to roughly breathe in and out. The expression of the god statue was far more contorted compared to before, as if it got infuriated further by Jinu's continued evasion. The god statue now stepped in front of Jinu. Seeing a creature as big as a high-rise blocking his entire view, Jinu felt like he couldn't breathe anymore. Did it think he was nothing more than a cornered rat? The god statue simply looked down at him and didn't do anything else. This is the end. Jinu sensed his own unavoidable death approaching closer after looking straight into the eyes of the god statue. However, from somewhere behind him, a beautiful and otherworldly voice came out. Jinu turned his head around to see what was going on. The lips of the stone statue holding a book moved, and whenever they did, a divine song flowed out and filled the interior of the massive chamber. Then we have more of the crumpled expression of the god statue slowly reverted back to the emotionless state. Soon, all those horrifyingly contorted facial muscles of the statues moved out. When the song of the stone statues came to its eventual end, the god statue turned around. Then, just how other stone statues had done up until now, it returned to its throne and settled down as if things that happened until now were nothing but a lie. Thud! The noise of the god statue sitting down on the throne resounded throughout the chamber. Barely made it. A thin smile formed on Jinu's lips. I was reading it again, sorry. Meanwhile, Jui began running from her position at the far end of the chamber.
Mr. Jinu!
She ran with all her might and knelt down next to him as tears streamed down on her face.
What can I do? What am I supposed to?
She summoned all of her magical energy and activated her healing magic. However, nothing seemed to improve. The dispersed hunters gathered around Jinu one by one. Every single one of them carried a dark expression. What? Mr. Jinu? Even then, only Jui was crying in sorrow. Why was everyone acting like this? Jinu's lips bobbled up and down. He wanted to ask what was going on, but he couldn't really summon forth his own voice. Sensing that he had no choice, he tried to prop himself up. Then, he noticed the pool of blood around his lower torso. Only then did he belatedly realize the change to his body. Below his right knee was gone. Jinu's eyes reflexively shifted towards the stone statue holding the shield. He then saw the trail of blood clearly visible on the end of the shield. And the rest of his right leg was just under that. Drip, drip. Drops of blood started falling from Jui's nose. That was the sign of her reaching the limits of her physical stamina. The healing magic from a rank B hunter was unable to recover missing limbs, meaning what she was doing was basically pouring water into a broken jug. Her stamina rapidly bottomed out in the end. It's fine. It's fine now, Miss Jui. You can stop now.
I'm going to heal you. I'll fix you as good as new.
Hunters stared at the two of them while forming miserable expressions. Out of the 17 who initially entered this chamber, only 6 remain. And from this group of 6, 2 of them had suffered horrible, grievous wounds. Song had lost his arm, while Jinu lost his leg. They might have survived, but none of them feel like rejoicing at the moment. It was then yet another strange noise rocked the chamber. The middle of the temple, where that strange magic formation could be found, suddenly rose up again above the ground. Jinu inwardly thought that it had finally come. Prove your piety it is. He already had a rough idea as to what those words could mean. Part 5. Final Trial. Mind you, we are still within Chapter 5. We're still in there. I am so glad I didn't decide to do 20 chapters per session, because these chapters are long. Whew. Part 5. Final Trial. The circular magic formation in the center of the temple began rising up noisily and only stopped after reaching the height of a couple of steps. An altar. Hunters displayed alert reactions as soon as Jinu muttered out. An altar?
He just said it's an altar.
Yeah, you did say so. I'm glad I didn't go through with it. The person who had rescued them from the two preceding crises was not some high-ranked hunter, but Renki Jinu, who used to be the butt of their jokes most of the time.
If it weren't for Mr. Sung, all of us would have been...
Hunters were thinking this exact same thought. Under the current circumstances, Jinu's words were their lifeline. Yeah, I remember your panic. You're gonna read 20 chapters? It's long! But yeah, I'm glad I didn't go through with it. Hunters were thinking this exact same thought. Under the current circumstances, Jinu's words were their lifeline. And now that Jinu had muttered out a word alter. Kim always was quick on the uptake, and so he caught on to the meaning first before anyone else had the chance to do so.
I get it. I see how it is.
Kim then unsheathed the sword hanging on his hips. Now normally, this weapon would be used to cut various monsters down, but for now, it would be utilized for a different purpose altogether.
Even if I'm a dumb bastard, I can more or less get what you're trying to say here.
Hunters nervously swallowed their saliva while looking at the sharp, coldly gleaming blade. Oi, Mr. Kim, why are you pulling your sword out like that? Why don't we talk about this first? Let's talk first. The highest ranked member among the group, Rank C Hunter Song, was heavily injured, meaning there was no one here that could potentially stop Kim, who boasted a pretty powerful set of skills himself, even within the D rank. Kim pointed towards the altar with his sword.
The final law. Well, the final law. Prove your piety. And there's an altar appearing out of nowhere in the middle of this place.
Didn't y'all vote of your own free will? They did vote. But you know, the prospect of gains, it'll make people do some dumb stuff. But getting back to this.
Oi! Mr. Kim, why are you pulling your sword out like that?
Why don't we talk about this first? Let's talk first. The highest ranked member among the group, Rank C Hunter Song, was heavily injured. Not heavenly injured, but heavily injured. Meaning, there was no one here that could possibly stop Kim, who boasted a pretty powerful set of skills himself, even within the D rank. Kim pointed towards the altar with his sword.
The final law. Prove your piety. And there's an altar appearing out of nowhere in the middle of this place.
Kim's gaze then shifted to Jinu.
So, aren't we supposed to offer up a sacrifice, Mr. Sung?
Jinu slowly nodded his head. That was what the youth thought as well. One of the surviving 6 had to act as a sacrifice. That's what the last law probably meant. Jinu came to this conclusion. He sensed more disturbance and raised his head and realized that the eyes of Mr. Kim, as he approached closer, did not look friendly at all. A long sweat drop glided down Jinu's forehead.
What? You, young man, don't say anything and be still.
Kim angrily shouted out and pointed his song at Mr. Song, who was squatting next to Jinu in order to check out the youth's condition.
Just who was it that dragged us to this place? Wasn't it this guy? Yes, it was Mr. Song. So, don't you think it's only right for Mr. Song to take the ultimate responsibility?
Jin tried to get up in a fit of anger, but then Song's hand that resembled the bark of an aged tree stopped the youth. Jinu looked at Song in disbelief. Song wordlessly shook his head. His eyes were pleading with Jinu, asking the youth to not say anything else. Of course, Jinu had lots of things to say, but he kept them down for now. Song slowly raised his body up.
What Mr. Kim said is right. I should take the blame for today. Old man, I guess we're now finally on the same page.
Kim used the tip of his sword to point towards the altar.
If you get it now, then let's get going already. Over 10 people died here because of you, old man.
But y'all all voted to get here. But that's the end of chapter 5. Onwards to chapter 6. Chapter 6! I'm just kind of scrolling down a little bit to see just how far I gotta go for 6. It's pretty decent. Let's keep going. Human maliciousness knows no limits. You're right, it knows no limits. Chapter 6. One of the dead hunters today happened to be Mr. Park, a personal friend of Mr. Kim. Exploring the dual dungeon was decided with the vote involving everyone, but Kim had already erased that memory off his head after losing much of his reasoning. Mr. Song spoke to Kim.
I'd like to walk on my own volition, so can you put the sword away?
Of course, Kim refused right away.
How can I trust you, old man? Stop wasting time and start moving already!
Song sighed softly under his breath and walked towards the altar. Kim pointed his sword. Where did I get shoulder from? Kim pointed his sword at the old man's back and followed on afterwards. Jinu bit his lower lip while watching the two men walk away. This isn't the fault of Mr. Song. More than half of the people agreed to do it together. Just because things had gone south, blaming Song for everything was simply too cowardly, he thought. But Jinu, unfortunately, did not possess the enough... Sorry, had to refresh the page here. Yeah, sorry, I had to refresh the page. It kind of stuttered there a little bit. Let's see. There. Jinu, unfortunately, did not possess enough strength to stop Kim here. Kim, thought to be one of the best among the rank D, and Sung Jinu, easily the worst of the rank E. The difference in their strengths was all too clear for him to see. Not only that, Jinu had even lost a leg. Yeah, I had to refresh my page here. It was like, ugh. But we're all good. If he tried to confront Kim as he was now, there was a chance that him and even Jui, who had been focusing solely on healing him, could meet with disaster. Darn it. Jinu squeezed his eyes shut. He never hated his own powerlessness as much as he did today. In the meantime, Song had stepped up on the raised altar. Suddenly, a red flame lit up near the outer perimeter of the altar as soon as he did. You need an intermission? Maybe I'll do one after I read this chapter. Maybe. Cuz I was kind of fumbling my words there and I apologize for that. But I'm good. Actually, you know what? Yo, CDs, good to see you. I'll see what I can do, Harsh. I remember seeing your comment on this the last several times I made anything related to solo leveling, so you don't need to worry. In the meantime, Songs had stepped up on the raised altar. Suddenly, a red flame lit up near the outer perimeter of the altar as soon as he did. Everyone nervously swallowed their saliva and observed the unfolding situation carefully. I can't remember how many times I have seen the phrase swallowed their saliva, swallowed her saliva, swallowed his saliva. There's a lot of that in these chapters, and I've only gone over 5 so far. Everyone nervously swallowed their saliva and observed the unfolding situation carefully. However, nothing else happened. Just a single flame came to life, and that was it. They waited for a while, but there was no visible change at all. Not only Kim, but everyone else got flustered by this situation. Kim quickly turned his head and spoke to Jinu.
Look here, Mr. Song. This wasn't it?
Jinu also shook his head. Even I. He too thought that once a person chosen as a sacrifice stepped up on the altar, the third law of prove one's piety would be completed. It's not about offering up a sacrifice? If so, then it was not necessarily bad news. If the law was not about sacrifices, then it meant Mr. Song could still be saved. Hey, Courier, what's going on? Yeah, you kind of popped in at a questionable moment of the conversation that I was having. Also, Kitty, I think it was, I think we can both agree. I think it was a good idea for me to not schedule another session of Death Stranding before I got finished with this session, because I feel like I'm going to go past 3 o'clock reading this with the last 4 chapters for this particular volume. He too thought that once a person chosen as a sacrifice stepped up on the altar, the third law of prove one's piety would be completed. It's not about offering up a sacrifice? If so, then it was not necessarily bad news. If the law was not about sacrifices, then it meant Mr. Song could still be saved. Jinu's expression brightened somewhat. He sweated bucket loads as he tried to stand up, and 2 hunters nearby quickly lent their assistance. Please take me closer to the altar so I can study it. Mr. Jinu, your injuries are... Jui also got up from her spot to follow after Jinu. Her complexion was rather pale after expending too much of her magical energy. But, because she had worked so hard, Jinu's blood loss had been temporarily halted, and the pain he felt was reduced to a barely noticeable degree. I gotta hurry up. The current condition of Jui, Kim's boiling rage, Song's injuries, and the frightened hunters, he didn't have a lot of time here. Jinu eventually arrived at the altar with the help from other hunters. Let's climb up on the altar. The 2 hunters flinched from his statement, but they trusted Jinu and stepped up. Then, 3 more flames lit up. Right away, Jinu's eyes gleamed brightly. It's the same number as the people on the altar. Mr. Song and Jinu, plus 2 others who helped the youth indeed. The flames lit up to match the number of people standing on the altar. And it kind of looked like these 4 flames were drawing a circle outside the altar. If I take in consideration the space between the flames, 2 more will complete the circle. It seemed that all the remaining people had to climb up on the altar for something, anything to get started. Jinu turned his head to ask Song, if we wait here, do you think other hunters will come to rescue us? Song shook his head.
Today is the 7th day since the gate opened. These things will start moving first before the help arrives. Because it's a gate ranked D, I see that it's been left too alone for far too long.
Well, that's how the operation operates, isn't it? A gate wouldn't open up fully after the 7th day. The real meaning of a raid was to kill the dungeon's boss monster, and therefore close the gate before that happened. When failing to do so, the monsters trapped in the dungeon would be set free from the dungeon, and they would be able to roam the outside world. Jinu looked behind him. The giant god statue was still looking down on them with an overbearing, arrogant expression from its throne. If that thing manages to go outside, then the ensuing chaos would be unimaginable. Of course, before that happened, hunters coming to his chamber to rescue them would also be killed by the statues first. He was now sure of the fact that they could not wait here forever. Jinu called out to Jui and Kim. Both of you. Climb up. Jui stepped up on the altar first. The hesitant Kim also followed suit soon afterwards. 2 more flames lit up, and the circle was now complete. And then, hunters were grandly stunned by what happened next. What the heck? What's going on here? As Jinwoo suspected, yet another change took place. It's coming! I'm gonna go ahead and raise my mic up a little bit so I'm not slouching as much. Put it in a comfortable position for myself. It's coming! From the outermost edge of the altar, small blue flames floated upwards and began drawing a circle of their own as well. There looked to be at least 30 of these blue flames, placed real tightly next to each other. 34, 35, 36. Jinwoo quickly counted them all as the blue flames completed the circle, and he realized that there were 36 of them. The 6 red flames that lit up to match the number of people, and the 36 blue flames that appeared outside them. What could be the significance behind that number? It was then. Clang! Without a warning, the resolutely shut doors suddenly opened wide. Hunters reflexively flinched. Ugh! They all wanted so bad to run towards the wide open door, but having seen the final moments of the choir boy hunter, they found it hard. I was about to say chore boy. They found it hard to take the first step. If one tried to be the first, just who knew what might happen to them? Everyone's gaze fixed on Jinwoo as if to demand an answer from him. However, Jinwoo's lips remained tightly shut. He couldn't come up with a guess at the moment. He didn't know where the open door was. He didn't know whether the open door was a trap, or they were now allowed to go out after they upheld the final law successfully. Too bad for him. Just as everyone was looking at Jinwoo, a horrifying noise filled up the entire chamber. Eh? The heads of all 6 hunters quickly snapped around to look. What was that? It's closing! Those darn things are all moving now! Hunter's breathing quickened in an instant. The stone statues that had only moved when the person got near were now several steps closer to the group. Jinwoo only needed a short moment to figure out what happened, of course. No, the statues didn't move. It's the plinths below them that moved. That horrifying screech from earlier on most likely came from the plinths beneath the statues grating against the stone floor. They're not moving anymore? Kim wiped the droplets of sweat on his forehead as he spoke. Yeah, them scary screeching door sounds, And don't you hate it when you have one in an apartment building? I know this from my past, where it's just extra, extra loud and you hear it open, and then you're just trying to listen to see if you hear anyone going up the stairs. That was me when I was younger as a kid when I was living in Germany. Kim wiped the droplets of sweat on his forehead as he spoke. While everyone was still staring at the statues, Jinwoo's focus was on the blue flames. They had been going out one by one, and 3 of them had flickered out of existence already. Hearing that screech, someone cried out, What was that? Where did it come from? Jinwoo quickly raised his head. The noise had come from his general direction. The stone statues facing him had moved a little bit closer. Why only my side? Was it because he looked at somewhere else briefly? In order to confirm, Jinwoo closed his eyes. The noise resounded out again. As soon as he opened his eyes, and the noise stopped. Okay, so essentially, these statues were having a weeping angel moment, and I don't like that at all. The noise resounded out again.
Mm.
As soon as he opened his eyes, the noise stopped. What the heck is going on here? What are we supposed to do about this? Jinu quickly shouted at others. Don't take your eyes off the statues, no matter what! When he thought about it, he realized that the statues first began moving closer to the group when others were busy looking at him. They creep closer when we're not looking at them. And that's the reason why I'll never play games where things are chasing after you and they stop moving when you look at them. I'm never going to play those games. It was right then another blue flame disappeared. However, there was still no discernible change to either the group or the statues. Could it be? Cautiously raising his arm, Jinu did his best not to take his eyes off the statue while checking the time with his wristwatch. As I thought, an interval of 1 minute, a blue flame was being extinguished. The blue flames are the timer. It was quite likely that one of the main points of the third law was to stay within the altar until all 36 blue flames died out. In other words, as long as everyone was keeping close watch on the statues, they'd be safe. It was quite possible that no one had to die at this final huddle. Now, should that be hurdle or huddle? Wanting to be more accurate in the remaining time, Jinu began recounting the number of blue flames once more. There are 30 remaining. They only need to endure 30 more minutes. Unfortunately, Jinu made a huge mistake just then. When he was counting the numbers of blue flames, his eyes wandered away for a brief moment, and that resulted in the statues creeping closer.
Mm.
The man standing on the opposite side screamed and ran towards the door. He simply couldn't hold on any longer, as the horrifying screeching noise coming from his back frightened him too much. As soon as he left the altar, one of the red flames disappeared. No! Jinu cried out urgently. However, the man running as if he had gone crazy escaped through the open doorway without meeting a grisly fate, which took everyone by surprise. What the heck? Mr. Sung, what's going on? That guy made it out alive! What the heck? Mr. Sung, what's going on? That guy made it out alive! Kim shouted out, flustered. Jinu was standing with his back to the doorway, so he couldn't really tell what was going on. Did something change? The door. Did something change? The door. The door is closed just a little. The door's closing? No. After that guy left, the door moved a little bit, but then stopped. Jinu then recalled one of the red flames disappearing as soon as that man left the altar. Darn it! Darn it! He immediately felt his heart go cold. One of the questions that he couldn't quite figure out until now, as he stood on top of this altar, finally had an answer. How could standing on an altar be a proof of one's piety? Indeed, he now had the answer to this quandary. And that answer was probably the worst one for Jinu, who had only one leg now and needed others' help just to keep his balance. That open doorway was a trap, a false hope right in front of one's eyes. If people saw the open door and climbed off the altar at the same time, the red flames would have gone out and the door would be closed shut again. Then, the banquet of raining blood and screams would inevitably follow next. On the other hand, the altar was the proverbial promised land. If each one did what they had to do in their positions until the timer ran out, then their survival would be guaranteed. So it was between the false hope right in front of one's eyes, or the unseen promise of salvation. The third law was a test to see if one could defend one's position without falling to the sweet temptation over yonder while constantly being under the encroaching threat of death. That is incredibly descriptive. I'm just gonna say. If that was you, you would have ran the moment the door opened. Hmm. Let me just see here. I saw it buffer just a little bit. I just wanted to make sure that everybody is good before I continue on. If we're all good, then I can keep going. Yeah, it looks like we're good now. Okay, cool. However, two flies in the ointment happened in this situation. The first was Jinu. Originally, the remaining group of people who would have ran straight for the open door. The remaining group of people would have ran straight for the open door, but they stopped first to listen to what Jinu had to say, and that helped them avoid the traps being sprung in the first place. We got lucky here. Indeed, that had to be the only explanation. Such a thing was only possible because Jinu managed to figure out the first two laws all by himself and earned the trust of others. Unfortunately for him, the second fly also happened. You push the family through first, but that's just me. I'd do the same. Unfortunately for him, the second fly also happened, something he didn't foresee. A deserter had appeared amongst their midst. How would human beings react when there was a hope of survival right in front of their eyes? It was way too obvious. The man helping Jinu up, abandoned the youth and bolted as well. Song hurriedly reached out and propped Jinu up from his back. Poof! When that man left the altar, yet another red flame disappeared, and as expected, the door closed a little bit more. Huh? Huh? Kim dazedly pointed at the second deserter, but just like the first person to abandon them, he too safely escaped past the doorway. Jinu confirmed the number of remaining red flames and shouted out, "We must not move! Any more than this, and then it'll be the end!" And that concludes Chapter 6, everyone. We are getting closer. Onwards to Chapter 7. Front, back, left, right. That door squeak, I don't have a door squeak on the soundboard, so I'm just So I'm just doing all the sound effects for myself. I'm sorry. Chapter 7. Front, back, left, and right. In order to secure all four directions, 4 people were the bare minimum required. Jinu himself, Jui, Mr. Song, and finally Mr. Kim. A single person leaving now would result in a gap within the field of vision. Kim wiped the sweat off his forehead and asked urgently, "Mr. Song, just what is going on here? Explain it to me properly." "We'll make it as long as we wait here. Only until all the blue flames are extinguished." Jinu spat out everything he had deduced so far. Kim nodded his head as his ears perked up. Jinu quickly ended his explanation and added one more thing at the end. "Remember, everyone here can get out of here alive." The laws of this chamber always left open a path for one's survival. The final law would not deviate from that. Jinu was certain of no one else needing to die as long as the remaining people trusted each other. Too bad. Kim's thoughts were quite different from the youth's. The old hunter asked hesitantly, Look here, Mr. Sung. You could be right on this one, but could the door close shut instead when the timer runs out?" Jinu couldn't answer that one. He came to his conclusion after considering several variables, but until the result was in, he couldn't be 100% certain of anything. However, what Kim wanted was a definite assurance. Rather than an uncertain promise of everyone else's survival, the definite survival of his own self had proved to be far more alluring in the end.
I'm sorry about this, but I don't think I can stay here anymore.
Huh?
Sorry.
With that parting word, Kim stepped down from the altar. He then ignored Jinu's urgent calling and ran towards the door. He stopped and looked for a brief moment just outside the door, but Kim did not step back inside the chamber again. Grit. Jinu gritted his teeth. Darn it! He had saved the lives of others, but what he got in return was definitely not something like gratefulness or friendship. Not even a thank you. Ain't nobody said thank you for all the ones who managed to survive because of Jin. Ain't nobody say thank you at all. His entire body shuddered from the pain of betrayal. Just as he suspected, as soon as Kim had abandoned them, a gap within the surveillance had been created. It was impossible for 3 people to guard all 4 directions. And so, the statues positioned in the blind spots began creeping closer to the altar. The encirclement of the stone statue was gradually tightening. Song took a look around and then spoke to Jinu and Jui.
Both of you should leave now.
His voice was full of resignation. Jinu looked at the old man. But,
Just as Kim had said, I was the one who dragged us all in here. If someone has to remain behind, then it'd be only right that I'm the one.
But still!
You two have a better future instead of you. You two have a better future ahead of you should you be the ones to survive today.
Song began smiling then. He was thinking of these 2 young people's hearts as they would have to abandon him here. Jinu helplessly nodded his head. He was uncomfortable about this whole thing, but there was no time left to argue back and forth who should remain in here. Song then tried to ask Jui to take care of Jinu.
Miss Jui, can you help out Mr. Sung here for a bit?
Yes.
However, just as she was about to prop him up, Jui plopped down to the floor. Jui tried to get up, but then tears began forming around the edges of her eyes.
My legs. I can't move my legs.
Both the expressions of Jinu and Mr. Song hardened in an instant. Jui's current physical condition did look terrible even from a casual glance. Her lips were in the shade of pale blue, while her entire body continued to tremble ever so imperceptibly. Not perceptibly. She was suffering from the side effects of overusing her magic energy when she was already at her physical limit. Because she tried to heal my leg. Jinu felt his chest tighten. Sorry, I scrolled down a little bit too quickly there. Jinu felt his chest tighten and couldn't say anything. However, they really didn't have any time left now. The stone statues were relentlessly approaching them without a moment of rest even now. Jinu shoved Song's hand away and plopped down to the ground himself. Seeing this, Song's eyes grew wider.
Young man?
Jinu spoke up with a determined expression on his face. Please take Jui and get out of this place.
I told you I'll be the one staying behind.
In that case, who's going to help Jui? It was pretty much impossible for him to take Jui, who couldn't even stand properly, and leave through the door within the time limit.
Of course.
There was the other choice of abandoning Jui behind as well. However, Jui had saved his life several times already, and the only reason why she was in this state was because she tried to help him with all of her might. He definitely did not want to suffer the guilty conscience of abandoning such a person behind in this godforsaken place. There's no time left. Please leave now. Song's expression remained hardened as he helped Jui up. She shook her head desperately while tears streamed down her face.
No, you can't. Mr. Jinu can still survive, you know. Let me.
I promised to buy you a dinner, didn't I? Jinu pulled out the rank E magic crystal from his pocket and placed it in her hand. Please use this and enjoy one on me. When I get out of here, I'll be coming around to collect the change, you see. A smile formed on Jinu's face, prompting Jui to cry out in anger.
How can you crack a joke in this situation, Mr. Jinu?
It was at this moment that Jinu signaled to Mr. Song with a nod. The older man then lightly chopped on the back of Jui's neck.
Huh?
With that, Jui lost her consciousness. Song picked up the unconscious girl and placed her over his shoulder. I'm really sorry about this. This is my choice, so it's fine. Mr. Song bowed his head to Jinu. With that goodbye, Song quickly left the altar. During the time the three of them were chatting, the statues had arrived at the proverbial stone's throw away. Jinu got on his knees and took several deep breaths. He spotted the sword Kim had left behind next to him, so he reached out and picked it up. Now that it has come down to this, I'll take at least one down with me. When he looked behind him, Jinu saw Mr. Song safely leaving through the doorway with unconscious Jui still perched upon his shoulder. What a relief that was. Only, I'll die here now. He wasn't doing this because of some noble determination to sacrifice himself or anything like that. No, there certainly was an element of him calculating the best possible outcome in his decision. Even if he survived and got out of here today, he would have to live as a cripple for the rest of his life. Obviously, carrying on as a hunter would be impossible then, and it was also questionable whether he'd be able to live normally as well. He was only a high school graduate, and since he didn't have any discernible job skills, he simply didn't have too many options left to put food on the table. Mom's hospital fees, and my sister's school fees too. If that were the case, then he might as well make sure his family would receive a better compensation from the association, even if it was just a single cent more. Was the compensation paid out to the family members 300 million won or 400 when one dies during a raid? TL between 267,000 and 356,000 US dollars. That was a huge amount for a worthless life of a ranky hunter. Finally, the statues arrived. The first one to arrive climbed up on the altar. Jinu glared at it and lifted the sword up. Come! Ultimately, the expected attack didn't come from the front, but his back. Stab! A long spear penetrated into Jinu's back and exited out of his chest. Jinu spat out a mouthful of blood. An unimaginable amount of pain rushed in like a tsunami wave.
If you were just stabbed a couple inches higher, you'd have a hole in your heart by now.
Jui's nagging he heard only a few hours ago slipped past his mind like a scene from a revolving lantern. The stone statue lifted up the spear, Jinnu was lifted up along into the air, still pierced through by that spear. He only got to struggle for a brief moment. For a brief moment, though, because the statue slammed him down on the altar. Slam! Sounds of bones breaking could be heard from all corners of his body. He shrunk away from the intense pain. Descriptive, ain't it? Yep, it is. Which means it's probably only going to get worse description-wise as I continue to go through the story. I'm ready, though. As he began trembling, the stone statue slowly surrounded him. They formed an encirclement around him. Jinnu raised his head and glared at them, his entire being shuddering non-stop. I don't want to die like this. Now that he was facing his final moments, tears pooled on his eyes. He recalled the faces of his family. He even recalled the face of Jui, her face full of anxiety and worry for his safety. I don't want to die. He didn't want to end his short 24 years of life in this place. Step. The stone statue wielding a sword took a step closer without a hint of emotion. Then it raised its sword up, high. Even though he was shaking hard, Jinnu did not avert his gaze away from this bastard. Finally, the statue's sword slammed down. Shrish! Only if I had one more chance! Jinnu's eyes shot open wider. It happened then. Special effects from the statue's movements suddenly stopping, as if someone had pressed the pause button. The scarily fast-moving sword suddenly stopped in midair. No, that wasn't actually correct. It hadn't stopped at all. It simply had slowed down so much that he ended up thinking that way. 1 millimeter in 1 minute? It was very slow, but the sword was still definitely coming down. What's going on here? Jinnu couldn't hide his astonishment. It was then a voice of a female he had never heard of before resounded within his head.
Completion requirements for the secret quest, The Courage of the Powerless, has been met.
Secret quest? Completion requirements met? Jinnu couldn't understand any of that. No, hang on a minute. Besides all that, where did that voice come from? Too bad for him, the voice ignored Jinnu's questions and continued on regardless.
You have acquired the rights to become a player. Will you accept?
He had acquired a right? Accept what exactly? Sounds like I'll be given something. He grew up dirt poor since his childhood, so he had never refused freebies until now. However, that was a story for when he was still alive. What use was there for free stuff when he was dead? When Jinnu hesitated and didn't answer, the voice in his head asked again as if to urge him on.
There is not enough time left for you to make your decision. Your heart will cease functioning precisely 0.02 seconds after you refuse to accept. Will you accept?
He couldn't tell whether he was hallucinating or not, but he still got to figure out that he was only a moment away from dying for good. He finally spotted countless other weapons headed in his direction. Besides that darn sword, that was how. Now that the things had devolved to such a degree, he might as well. If you're giving it to me, then just give it to me already. There was no need to utter anything out at all. He simply thought about it in his head. Even then, the voice of the female replied to him immediately.
Congratulations on becoming a player.
Flash! A blinding light suddenly wrapped around Jinnu's body, and at the same time, he lost his consciousness. Part 6. Penalty. He opened his eyes. We're still in Chapter 7, though. He opened his eyes. He saw a white ceiling, and his nose stung from the odor of disinfectants. He also felt the sensation of a hard mattress against his back. Hard mattresses? Wait, hospital beds are hard beds? Are they hard? I can't remember the last time I was in a hospital bed. Huh. Jinu immediately recognized where he was. He felt the sensation of a hard mattress against his back. Jinu immediately recognized where he was. A hospital? Ever since he met the rank B hunter Jui, the frequency of him staying in one had decreased somewhat, but still, hospitals were familiar places for Jinu, just as he'd be with a local convenience store. So much so that he even heard a rumor of there being a special seat reserved for himself at the hunter's hospital, too. Oh, they are hard? Wow. You'd think they would make it so that patients are actually comfortable. But oh well. Jinu raised his upper torso up. That'll be a topic for another discussion. The original volume? The original novel? Yes. Hi, Dragon. Hello. Hello. Jinu raised his upper torso. We're currently still on chapter 7. Jinu raised his upper torso up. He then placed his hand on his chest and felt the vibrations coming from there. His heart was beating without a problem. I survived? It wasn't only that, though. Unlike before, his entire being felt light and airy. He'd be feeling heavy-headed and fatigued whenever he woke up from a hospital bed. But it was a different story now. No, it was as if he had woken up in his own bed after a night of a good rest. What's going on? This shouldn't have been possible when he thought back to the moments before he lost his consciousness. The sword was falling on his head right before his eyes. Even if he got lucky and the sword missed, he was still surrounded by countless scary enemies. Those darn things were strong enough to give the assault team formed solely for the rank S hunters a genuinely hard time. But I came out of that situation alive? Was he dreaming things then? Fortunately, there was a good way of confirming it for himself. Jinu pulled away the blanket covering him. If that situation had been real, then his leg would still be gone. And if he had been dreaming, then his leg would be. You've finally woken up. And that is the end of chapter 7. Onwards to chapter 8. 2 more chapters after that, and we can be done with, the first 10 chapters of the light novel. Chapter 8. Jinu was surprised by the weighty voice coming from the corner of the hospital room and hurriedly turned his head to look. I apologize if we took you by surprise. Unfortunately, we are unable to wait any longer. 2 men, kitted out in black business suits, approached Jinu's bed. The youth tilted his head and asked them, Who are you? He had never seen these 2 faces before. One of them, with the close-cropped hair like a soldier and wearing a pair of sunglasses, presented him with a business card. This is who we are. Jinu received the business card and read what was written on it. Wu Jinchul, the section chief of the monitoring division, the Korean Hunters Association? The monitoring division was the only department in the Hunters Association with many strong hunters in their payroll. Well, since this department was tasked with managing the country's hunters, so quite obviously they would employ many high-class hunters to facilitate that purpose. Yeah, you're definitely reading the web novel version of the story because I just checked. Nothing to worry about, though, because there's no difference between web novel and light novel. Okay, good. So I can keep calling it the light novel then, because there's not that much of a difference. Basically reading the same thing. Good, because I've already made the thumbnails, and I'm not going to make several more just for it to say WN instead of LN. What does the monitoring division want with me? Wu Jinchul dragged a chair closer to the bed and sat down. The other man, who must have been his subordinate, stood behind him. The unspoken pressure emanating from the two buff guys staring down in close vicinity was quite heavy. The story they conveyed was rather surprising, though. I was unconscious for 4 days? By any chance, do you remember what happened before you blacked out? Yes, I do. And why is yours different? I don't know. I don't know. By any chance, do you remember what happened before you blacked out? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Sorry, I gotta do these inflections right. Please tell us everything you can remember. Jinwoo told them everything truthfully, minus the strange hallucinatory words he heard before he lost his consciousness. And that's when you lost your consciousness? Is that all? Yes, I opened my eyes next and I'm in a hospital. Woo Jin-chul and his lackey exchange meaningful glances. For some reason, they seemed to be troubled by Jinwoo's lack of knowledge. Actually, Jinwoo was the one who wanted to find out what happened the most in this room. Just how did I get to this hospital? Did a large guild participate and kill those darn things? Well, actually... Woo Jin-chul awkwardly opened his mouth. By the time the agents of the Monitoring Division and the White Tiger Guild arrived at the scene after being briefed by the survivors. The White Tiger Guild was a supermassive guild and also one of the top 5 in the country. The association had recognized the danger, hence they requested the aid of such a huge guild as the White Tiger Guild in the first place. Just what did happen back there? Jinwoo nervously swallowed a dry spit. What is with all these mentions of swallowing saliva and nervously swallowing dry spit? What is up with that? I'm just kind of asking, okay? I'm kind of curious. By the time everything was gone, the only thing to be found within that open space was you, Mr. Sung Jinwoo. There was not one trace of the god statue nor the stone statues. Come again? Jinwoo displayed a shocked, disbelieving face. It's hard for us to believe it as well. If there had been any inconsistencies in the testimonies of the survivors, or if we had failed to find the remains of the victims in the chamber, we might have suspected something fishy was going on. Woo Jin-chul scratched his chin. It'd been 6 years since he got ranked as an A and started working for the Monitoring Division. He could confidently say that he had witnessed and experienced pretty much everything during his tenure. However, this kind of situation was a first even for him. He had asked other guilds as well as the associations in other countries, but the end result was nothing worthy to speak of. That was why. Give me a sec. Family's calling me. All right, back to it. That was why. So, this is what we've been thinking. Woo Jin-chul carefully opened his mouth. There were powerful creatures in that chamber, without a doubt. But they were taken care of by an unknown group, or an unknown person. Because no otherworldly beings escaped from the gate before it was closed, you see. They had to consider all the possibilities. Even if the odds were low, they had to confirm them all. The head honchos of the association deliberated, and then deliberated for some more, and finally came up with a theory. Woo Jin-chul carefully studied Jinwoo's reactions as he continued on. We suspect that Hunter Sung Jinwoo might have gone through another awakening. Another awakening? Jinwoo's eyes... another awakening? Jinwoo's eyes shot open wide. Although extremely rare, there have been instances of a human who has awakened his or abilities as a hunter who had awakened his or her abilities as a hunter going through yet another awakening. Often referred to as reawakening, those who undergo this process would normally become extremely powerful compared to before. Originally, once a hunter's rank was assigned at the beginning, it rarely changed. A hunter's abilities were determined the moment one went through an awakening. That was why. However, it was a different story for those going through the reawakening process, jumping past their own limitations to rise up from, say, C to A or even from B to S. Such things had happened before. Wu Jinchul nervously swallowed his saliva. Again! Again! I thought I was going to be able to focus and just read through everything naturally, but I keep seeing what is with all these constant mentions of people swallowing their saliva. I have seen it over 15 different times so far. Someone's probably going to correct me and say, like, actually, it was 12 times. You miscounted because I paid attention while you were reading. But so many mentions of it. Why? I'm sorry, I need to focus. Wu Jinchul nervously swallowed his saliva. Sung Jinu. If he went through a reawakening and became a rank S, no, maybe even exceeding that, then it's possible for him to kill those monsters all by himself. The god statue was said to have melted rank C hunters with nothing but its eyes, according to the survivors. If one were able to kill such a creature even while unconscious, just how powerful one could possibly be. To prepare for this unlikely possibility, Wu Jinchul labeled this incident as top secret and made sure everyone involved would keep their mouths shut. This was also the reason why Sung Jinu found himself in a hospital room all alone, as well as being looked after by some of the finest medical practitioners in the nation. Wu Jinchul's chest began beating really fast. Could Korea finally have a hunter on the level of an international powerhouse? There were less than 10 people in the entire world that could be truly described as a global powerhouse. But what if Korea were to possess a powerhouse that was said to rival a nuclear warhead in terms of pure firepower? Sorry, family just walked in, and I want to keep my reading concise. There were less than 10 people in the entire world that could truly be described as a global powerhouse. But what if Korea were to possess a powerhouse that were said to rival a nuclear warhead in terms of pure firepower? Of course, confirming the truth of the reawakening wasn't difficult at all. Didn't the wise elders once say to make hay while the sun still shines? Wu Jinchul signaled to his lackey. Bring it here. Then the lackey went to the corner of the room and began rummaging through a briefcase placed there. This is... Before Jinu could finish his question, Wu Jinchul explained first. It's the device to measure your magic energy. He added that although this device had been miniaturized, its efficiency or accuracy did not fall short of the actual full-size measuring device located in the Hunters Association. All you have to do is place your hand on this magic crystal over here. On top of a circular plate, there was a fist-sized magic crystal embedded in the middle. Its color was pitch black, as if it was a black hole that wanted to suck him in. Saliva leveling. We are not going to start that. We are not going to start that. We are going to stop that right now. I am putting a stop to that on the very first session we have of the light novel. We're putting a stop to that right now. On top of a circular plate, there was a fist-sized magic crystal embedded in the middle. Its color was pitch black, as if it was a black hole that wanted to suck him in. It was one of the highest quality magic crystals that cost as much as 1,000,000,000 won, not to mention that could only be found in monsters ranked A or higher. Almost 900,000 US dollars. When Jinwoo stared at the magic crystal without saying anything, Wu Jinchul formed a dignified, serious expression and spoke up. This is a necessary step during our investigation, so please cooperate with us. Jinwoo nodded his head. If he indeed had undergone a reawakening, then his life would do a 180 in an instant. And they were going to test it out for him for free? So who was he to refuse? Jinwoo placed his hand on top of the black crystal, and soon enough, warm rays of light oozed out from it. Cold sweat drops formed on the foreheads of Wu Jinchul and his lackey. Sound effects of a beam of light dissipating. It's literally written here on these pages. Not too long after then, the light surrounding the crystal dissipated. Wu Jinchul hurriedly took off his sunglasses and confirmed the numbers. Right away, a small earthquake rocked Wu Jinchul's eyes. How can this be? Is this season already in animation? Yes. It's literally the first season. It's literally the first season of the anime. How can this be? He rechecked the numbers, but it remained the same. How could a person holding a hunter license possess the magic energy value of only 10? When considering the fact that the lowest average value for rank E, the bottom rank, was around 70 to 100, Sung Jinwoo was no different from a regular person. Is it really a reawakening? If it is, what could be my... And Jinwoo was just thinking, is it really a reawakening? If it is, what could be my new rank now? Jinwoo's hands were soaked in the sweat of anticipation. Seeing the suspicious reactions of the two monitoring division agents, the result must have been somewhat beyond their expectations. Meanwhile, Wu Jinchul was comparing the existing data on Jinwoo with the new measurement. His first measurement returned the value of 12. 4 years later, it's 10. It has decreased by 2, but it is within the margin of error. In other words, the magic energy measuring device was working fine. Instead, it was Sung Jinwoo's magic energy that happened to be illogically, nonsensically low. It was a miracle that he had survived until now. Wu Jinchul rapidly realized that being here was a waste of time, so he got up from his seat. Let's go. Yes, sir. Wu Jinchul and his lackey quickly packed up to leave. Excuse me? Can you tell me what is... I was just confirming things, brother. Anytime. Anytime. If you haven't seen the anime, please watch it. It's amazing. Excuse me? Could you tell me what is... Just as Jinwoo was about to ask, Wu Jinchul bowed his head slightly. Thank you for your cooperation. If you remember anything else, please give us a call anytime. As if their rear ends were on fire, the two men in black rapidly left the room as soon as they put away the device. The hospital room that felt rather small suddenly became quiet and lonely. Jinwoo scratched the back of his neck. I guess that was a no then. Well, if he thought about it, besides him feeling refreshed, there doesn't seem to be any change to him at all. Even if he did go through a reawakening, it'd still be difficult for him to kill all those statue bastards after all. Anyways, he says maybe you might have a chance against him if you were either the ultimate weapon hunter Choi Jong-in or the rank SS hunter Go Gun-hee. Of course, him speculating this was meaningless, since he had never seen them in action before. There was always a thick veil of secrecy draped over the hunters ranked S. They were more like clouds in the sky to him, actually. You're the biggest fan, actually? You already finished the manual many times? Oh, nice. Very nice. They were more like clouds in the sky to him, actually. He thought up to here and inadvertently raised his head up, and that's when he saw it.
Huh?
He looked up without thinking and then saw words floating in the air.
You have several unread messages.
He closed his eyes and opened them again.
You have several unread messages.
The words remained floating up there without a single change. He shook his head hard a few times and even rubbed his eyes, but they were still there. Jinnu massaged his aching forehead and lowered his head. It hadn't been a long time since I started hearing weird things, but now I'm even seeing them too. Could something in his head really be broken? There was a condition called PTSD, after all. People who experienced a huge accident or a traumatic event usually suffered from this condition. It was only a few days ago since he witnessed the deaths of many of his comrades, not to mention he himself nearly died as well, so it would not be so strange to hear or see weird things as a possible side effect. However, there were a couple of things that prevented him from dismissing this out of hand. Jinnu's sight lowered to his leg. The leg that got cut in half by the shield of the stone statue was now all fine and dandy. The voice he heard out of the blue inside of the underground temple, hidden within the depths of the double dungeon. His completely cured leg, and now those words floating in front of his eyes. Too many weird things were happening all at once. What if? There was a chance that all these things were not isolated events but linked to one another. When his thoughts arrived here, his aching head felt just a bit clearer. Okay, fine. Jinnu slowly raised his head. Once the confusion in his heart died down and he felt calmer, he became quite curious about the contents of those so-called unread messages. There might be answers to his questions found within those messages, after all. In order to confirm the messages, he reached out towards the words, and his hand simply went past them. It's not touch-operated? It seemed he got way too used to how a smartphone worked. He couldn't think of any other way to access the messages other than tapping on the icon, though. While he was deliberating on the means to access the messages, he recalled the memories from the moments right before he blacked out. Right, that happened. Back then, he could only get his intentions across to that unknown voice by talking to it. Just like back then, I should either form the words in my head or speak it out loud. Thinking that it must be the case, Jinnu then began to mutter the potential combinations of words one by one. Confirm. Messages. Confirm messages. Check messages. Reading. I want to read. I want to look. Hey, show me already, will ya? It was then. Just what is it that you wish to see that bad? He felt a cold, probing stare coming from his side, so he turned his head to look, and spotted his little sister in her school uniform looking at him from the gap of the half-open door. Jinnu became speechless. Her oppa, busy glaring at the ceiling while demanding someone to show something to him, she simply didn't know how to explain this one to her. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 8. Onwards to Chapter 9. One more chapter after that, and we are done for today. Yep, these will indeed be long sessions. So I hope you guys are ready, actually. Chapter 9.
Maybe you hurt your head really bad.
The younger sister stood at a distance away and asked Jinnu, prompting him to shake his head vigorously. No, that's not it. Even though he denied it, Jinnu's younger sister, Sung Jinna's eyes remained suspicious.
Are you really okay?
Yes, I'm telling you the truth. Jinna blankly swept her gaze all over Jinnu. Not Jinnu, but Jinnu. Sorry, Jinu. Before she came closer, while her breathing became uneven, angry. And then, as soon as Jinu assumed a defensive position, she began punching him in all the unguarded parts.
I told you to stop getting hurt. You have any idea how worried I was?
I'm sorry.
Other people walk away fine, but how come it's only you who gets hurt all the time?
Sorry. The strength behind Jinna's punches gradually seeped away. She soon stopped, and as her head fell, began crying. Jinu slowly patted the back of his sobbing sister. His own nostrils stung quite a bit then. That's what we call on the verge of crying yourself, and you get that pre-crying nose sting. I was thinking of leaving this kid alone and dying, wasn't I? What a relief that he made it out alive. When he looked back, there had been way too many brushes with death for comfort back then. It was as if he had experienced one heck of a terrifying nightmare. Jinu's gaze shifted ever so slightly towards the words floating in the air.
You have several unread messages.
It still feels like I haven't completely woken up from that nightmare just yet, does it? There were so many things he couldn't understand. But so what? The most important thing was that he came back alive, and he got to see his little sister again. Then there's a sniff. Thankfully, his strong-willed sister stopped crying after a short while. Unfortunately for him, though, her nagging continued on for over 1 hour afterwards.
Do you hear me? If you get hurt one more time, I'm going to give up on studying, find a job, and make sure you don't work as a hunter ever again.
Jinna's sharp gaze didn't really suit her pretty face, but that was a biological trait she had shared with her older brother. Okay, I hear you. Jinu nodded. Sorry, you're gonna have to understand that I gotta get used to saying his name as Jinu instead of Jinwoo, because I said that so many times during my original reading of the manhwa, so it's still kind of ingrained in me a little bit. I'm trying to make myself say Jinu all the time, because that's the proper pronunciation. Jinu nodded his head as if he'd given up. Only after she was able to extract his assurance several times more did she display a hint of satisfaction, and stood up from the seat. You, going somewhere?
Yeah, to school. I got permission to leave so I could check up on you. So I gotta go back.
Jinu nodded his head. Right. The university entrance exams are next year. Yep, executive decision. I'm gonna wait until Tuesday to play Death Stranding. There's some serious stuff I want to show you guys in that, but given how long it's taken me to read through this, we're probably not going to be able to have a nice, satisfying session of Death Stranding today, so we'll save that for Tuesday, because I don't have anything scheduled on Tuesday. So tomorrow will be the Death Stranding day. Okay, I hear you. Jinu nodded his head as if he'd given up. Only after she was able to extract his assurance several times more did she display a hint of satisfaction, and stood up from the seat. You, going somewhere?
Yeah, to school. I got permission to leave so I could check up on you. So I gotta go back.
Jinu nodded his head. Right, the university entrance exam after next year. She might never have received a private tutoring, nor did she ever attend extra classes, but she always got ranked within the top 10 in her school until now. Jinna dreamed of becoming a doctor. Only until a few years ago, she just loved to waste time on video games and stuff like that. There's no such thing as wasting time on video games. It's what I do for a living, and I get paid for it. Gotta love it. Haha. Only until a few years ago, she just loved to waste time on video games and stuff like that. But then, after their mother fell ill, she swore to become a doctor and never stopped studying since. Jinu dearly wished to make her dream come true no matter what. Hang on a minute. Playing video games? Suddenly, Jinu's eyes gleamed a bit dangerously.
Okay, I'm going now.
Just as Jinna was leaving his room, Jinu urgently called out to her. Hey, Jinna?
Yeah?
When you are playing video games, Jinna smirked softly.
I don't play games anymore. The third year of high school is only a few days away, you know.
I know. There's something I want to ask you, though.
Oh, really? Like, I didn't know Opa played video games though.
Jinna suddenly displayed an intense interest at a subject she was deeply intimate with once upon a time was brought up. That is literally me when I'm talking about video games or manga with anyone. I light up because I like talking about it. Jinnu sneaked a glance at the still floating message in the air and asked her, When there are unread messages in a game, what should I do to access them?
You gotta open the mailbox first.
I gotta open the mailbox?
Kring!
As soon as Jinnu said the word open, a clear beep entered his head and the hidden messages revealed themselves.
There are 2 unread messages. Congratulations on becoming a player. Unread. Daily quests. Preparations to become strong is now available. Unread.
Jinnu smiled brightly. Finally! Seeing her older brother's complexion suddenly brighten like that, Jinna felt something was wrong and quickly asked him.
What's up? What game is it? You need my help?
Jinnu firmly shook his head. Nope, no need. I'll do it alone. How would his younger sibling react if he told her what had been happening to him right now? I really don't want to be labeled as a loon buyer. Jinnu swallowed back the things he wanted to say for the time being. While pretending to see her out, Jinnu confirmed her getting on the elevator and quickly returned to his room. I can't repeat the same mistake again. Click! To prevent eyewitnesses intruding on him, he even locked the door. Finishing with his preparations, Jinnu sat on the bed and read the titles of the messages available to read. Congratulations on becoming a player. Daily quest preparations to become strong is now available. He thought the first message sounded familiar, as if he heard it before from somewhere. Where have I heard it from? I know I have. So the first message then. Family's calling in. Give me a sec. I got food on the way, so I do indeed need to get past these chapters. He thought the first message sounded familiar, as if he heard it before from somewhere. Where have I heard it from? I know I have. So the first message then? Congratulations on becoming a player. Confirm. Ding! This system will now support the growth of the player. Failing to comply with the system's instructions will result in potential penalties. Your rewards have been delivered. Ah! He belatedly remembered this. He heard those words just before he lost his consciousness. Back then, it was talking about a player this and that, no? Back then, it was talking about a player this and that, no? Of course, back then or even now, he still couldn't really understand what on earth was happening here. The system, growth, penalties, and finally, rewards. The words with unknown meanings fell on his lap one after the other. Just what will it help grow, and what will it reward me with? Seeing the words that could only be found in a video game appearing before his eyes without any prior explanations only served to confound him even further. He decided to worry about the confusing words later and calmly opened the next message. Daily quest preparations to become strong is now available. And then he gulps. Jinnu unconsciously swallows his saliva again. What is with the swallowed his saliva comments every single time? This is really going to become a running gag. I'm sorry. Every single time. Jinnu unconsciously swallowed his saliva after reading that rather suggestive title. His heart began to beat faster in anticipation. Confirm. Gring! Daily quest. Preparations to become strong. Press up 100 times. Incomplete. 0 out of 100. Sit up 100 times. Incomplete. 0 out of 100. Squat 100 times.
incomplete, 0 out of 100. Running, 10 kilometers, incomplete, 0 out of 10. Warning, incompletion of daily quests will result in appropriate levels of punishment.
Jinu reflectively spat out a dumbfounded chuckle after confirming the contents of the message. Seriously, man? Should this be the feelings of disappointment? To think what the grand-sounding daily quest, the one titled Preparations to Become Strong, was nothing more than a list of physical exercises to train his body. Well, for sure, if he did as the quest said, then his body might get a bit tougher. Was this what that growth and reward thing the system was talking about? Now that I think about it, he recalled reading a quote of a person with an inner problem should face attention to the inner voice from some book in the past. Sorry, it wasn't face attention. He recalled reading a quote of a person with an inner problem should pay attention to the inner voice from some book in the past. Sorry about that. My apologies. In other words, one would see what they wanted to see, eventually. Just how desperately did he want to become stronger that he ended up seeing this stupid hallucination? Although it was funny, he also felt a bit lonely inside. If anyone could become stronger by doing these exercises, who would be willing to go through that much hardship then? Jinu shook his head. He suddenly thought that he was a fool for searching for answers to his questions from a darn hallucination. I don't care anymore. Jinu lied down spread eagle on the bed. He wordlessly stared at the ceiling. He wasn't doing anything important, yet the time continued to tick by. Just as he began to feel the weight of the stillness filling up his hospital room, Jinu abruptly raised his torso off the bed. But what if something could change? As his thoughts were filled half with the uncertain expectation and the other half by unconvinced curiosity, he began wondering whether he should at least give it a shot. Well, I've got nothing else to lose anyways. There would be no reason not to try it out. If he treated as a light workout to stretch his muscles or something, no? He made up his mind. Fine, let's try it out. Jinu climbed off the bed and stretched himself for a bit, before leaning against the corner of the bed and slowly performing the press-up. 1, 2, 3. The count started from 1 and quickly climbed upwards. 97, 98, 99, 100. Since he started this thing, he decided to do all 100. But quite different from his expectation, nothing happened when he finished. Other than his arms aching just a little, that was. Just what the heck am I doing? Jinu smirked helplessly and stood straight up. Congratulations on becoming a player, read. Daily quest, preparations to become strong is now available. The messages were now marked as read. There were no words of unread messages popping up in his view, and he also didn't feel like humoring this hallucination anymore either. He had enough of this, in other words. Jinu closed the mailbox without regret. Jinu yawned out at length and climbed back up on the bed. He felt sleepy as if he had pushed himself too hard. The sky outside the window was already dyed in the colors of the sunset. It's already this late, huh? The monitoring division agent said earlier that his hospital fees would be taken care of by the association. He figured that it wouldn't be too late to leave after receiving a thorough examination of his body and get the all clear from the doctors first. Jinu laid down comfortably while thinking as such. I'm sure these hallucinations and weird things I hear will eventually go away with time. His eyelids slowly closed shut, and Jinu drifted away into a deep slumber. Even when Jinu was softly snoring to himself, the needles of the clock hanging by the wall continued to tick away. The needles spun and spun around until they indicated 11 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds p.m. 58, 59, 60. The needles stopped moving precisely as they touched 12 o'clock midnight.
Ring! You failed to complete the daily quest. You'll be transferred to the penalty zone for a set period of time.
Then there's a rumbling. Jinu's eyes shot right open from the violent tremor that shook his entire body. An earthquake? Jinu sat right up and grabbed the edges of the bed. The shaking was so bad that he couldn't maintain his balance. Another rumbling. The shaking got progressively worse as the seconds ticked by. It happened then. Sound effects or special effects for things turning into powder and falling to the floor. It's just written here. One of the steel bars on the bed he held on for dear life suddenly broke. No, it didn't break per se, but simply disappeared. Jinu hurriedly looked at his palm. No steel bar there, just grains of sand. Sand? Special effects for things turning into powder and falling to the floor again. The other metal bar also transformed into sand as well. Meanwhile, the earthquake became even more violent. An even bigger rumbling this time.
Yeah!
In the end, Jinu was thrown off from the bed. He bounced around all over the hospital room and screamed out. Even when that was happening, items within the room were turning into sand one at a time. And then he screams again.
Ah!
Plop. Jinu was flung away and got deposited rather unceremoniously. He felt something soft against his fingertips. They happened to be ultra-fine grains of sand. And the accursed earthquake had stopped. Puh! Puh! Jinu spat out the sand in his mouth and hurriedly raised his head up. His eyes caught the sight on an endless plain of nothing but sand. Jinu frowned heavily and got up. All the sand that found its way inside his clothes poured out. He dusted the sand caked on his chest while taking a look around him. Indeed, all he could see was sand, and more sand. A desert? This couldn't be real. Until a few moments ago, he was sleeping on a bed inside a hospital located in the middle of Seoul. But now, as soon as he opened his eyes, he was in the middle of a massive desert. Jinu scooped up a handful of sand and let it slip through his fingers. The fine grains fell straight down to the ground. There's not a single breeze here. It wasn't just the breeze, though when he raised his head up to look, the sky didn't have a sun, a moon, or any stars for that matter. It was an empty sky, as if it was filled up with black ink and nothing else. However, for some reason, he had no trouble seeing at all. Just, where is this place? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 9. Onwards to Chapter 10. And to think these chapters went up last year. All these chapters went up last year. Interesting. Chapter 10. And I was kind of biding for time that my family would get here with food, but they haven't shown up yet. So hopefully I can get through at least halfway through this before they return. Chapter 10. It happened then. Suddenly, the sandy ground next to him caved in and a deep pit formed there. Huh? Jinu desperately ran away so he could avoid getting sucked in down there. As a Monster Hunter Wilds player, there's nothing more annoying than getting sucked into a sand hole in the plains. The sandy pit grew wider and wider, and eventually, Jinu had to crawl on all fours just to pull himself out. He plopped down on his butt, panted heavily, and stared at the bottom of the pit. Quite bizarrely, he could see that the sand at the bottom was boiling. Realizing that just one misstep would have resulted in him falling in there sent shivers down his spine. Hang on a minute. Just made you hungry, be right back? Hey, at least you guys get to eat while I read. I'm still waiting on the food. Realizing that just one misstep would have resulted in him falling in there sent shivers down his spine. Hang on a minute. Jinu's eyes narrowed in suspicion. It's not actually boiling, is it? When he took a closer look, he spotted something pretty big wiggling down there. Jinu instinctively forced himself up. He was getting a really bad premonition right about now. Soon enough, just as Jinu took a step back, the sand within the pit suddenly exploded upwards. The falling sand emitted the roar of a waterfall. Jinu's eyes went extra round in the meantime.
An insect?
The identity of the thing that exploded out from the sand was a giant centipede. I can't really make a whole bunch of bug sounds. Oh, that'll work. Yep, that'll work. That'll be my bug sound. When fully revealed, the darn thing's head almost reached the height equaling that of a 5-story building. Jinu anxiously swallowed his saliva. We're gonna move on. I feel like I'm gonna be seeing this throughout the next 20 sessions we have of this. This is unreal. For sure, the bastard was unrealistically huge. He had never heard of a centipede this big existing in the world before, but the size of the centipede wasn't the only thing that shocked Jinu. Why is there a name floating on top of that monster? Was he dreaming again? Jinu closed and opened his eyes again, yet nothing had changed. Even now, there were 5 red words floating on top of the monster's head. Just like a monster from a video game might have. The poison-fanged giant desert centipede. Just like its horrendous and bizarre appearance, its name too was something he'd like to avoid at all cost. What drew his attention the most was the 2 letters, poisoned and fanged. Those aren't letters though, those are words. He spotted a pair of fangs as large as a child jutting out just below the bastard's jaw. Really likes calling all these things bastards, huh? It didn't take a genius to figure out what might happen if he got stabbed by those fangs simply from its name alone. Seeing those large fangs in its jaws constantly opening and closing, it was as if it's busy licking its lips, right? It was then the sound went off in his head again.
Cling! Penalty quest. Survival. Goal. Please survive until the end of the time limit. Time limit, 4 hours. Remaining time, 4 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds.
Are you kidding me? However, as soon as the remaining time changed to 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds, the centipede parted sand and rushed towards him as if it couldn't wait any longer. Sound effects for sand parting ways. I'm just letting you know it's in here.
What the heck?
Jinu hurriedly spun around and ran for his life. There was no time to deliberate on things. If he wanted to run, if he wanted to live, then he had to run. That was the only thought racing in his head. However, even before he had taken several steps, another pillar of sand exploded upwards not too far from him. Boom! Jinu fell on his rear from the powerful shockwave. He rolled on the sandy ground before urgently getting back up. He swiped the sand off his face before his eyes shot open even wider. This time, it wasn't just 1 or 2 of them. Boom! Boom! Before he had even noticed it, there were 7 sand centipedes jutting out from the sand, and they were all glaring at him. As the centipedes issued shrill cries, Jinu's complexion changed for the worse. A lot worse. Dang it. Jinu reappeared in the hospital room exactly 4 hours later. Plop. Jinu keeled over on the floor and painfully wheezed out. His mouth felt full with this coarse, grainy taste. His eyes stung badly, too, seemingly like sand particles got in there. Jinu whimpered and groaned for a long time before powerlessly falling flat on his back. He didn't have any energy left to lift even a finger. Just what was that? Jinu continued to pant heavily when a new message appeared before him. Ring! Why I gotta make that sound? Oh, you don't like the sound of the centipedes?
Like you don't like the sound I'm making for the centipedes. Do you not like the sound I'm making for the centipedes? This is the voice of the centipedes I'm going to be using from now on. What, you don't like it?
I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I'm messing with you, Kitty. I need to get back on track here. I'm so sorry. I'm not really, but I'm also so sorry. Let's get back to it. Ring! You. I think my family just showed up with food. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, they just showed up. All right, let me go down and help bring food up, and then we'll continue on with the chapter. Be back, everybody. All right, I am back. Question, do you consider spaghetti a side dish or a main dish? It can be both. It can be a side dish if you're having lasagna as the main dish. But that's just me. But let's get back to it. I'll get you back with foods. I needed that laugh, thank you. Of course. Happy to oblige. Let's get to the rest of this chapter, because I got food here. Once we get done with this, I'll say my piece, and then we'll conclude it for this session for today.
Ring! You completed the penalty quest.
Jinu's expression crumbled into something unsightly. A penalty quest? Did he do something worthy of being punished? Jinu carefully retreaded his memories until he recalled the daily quest he abandoned midway yesterday. Could it be? Now that he thought about it, it definitely said that if the request was not completed, he'd be hit with a corresponding penalty. That was not hallucination? Indeed, it was not a hallucination, nor was it a dream. There was no need to pinch his cheeks to confirm whether this was a dream or reality. When he was running around, the shortness of breath felt so suffocatingly harsh, and the pain he felt when he got grazed by the centipede's leg still felt fresh in his mind. Everything happened for real. He nearly died back there. This is way too much. The so-called penalty turned out to be him being thrown into a dang execution ground. At the same time, another ominous premonition rushed into his head. If this event was indeed caused by the daily quest thing, then without a doubt, this would not be the last time. Sure enough, he got to hear yet another mechanical beep go off in his head. He flinched in surprise, but thankfully it was not another quest or anything like that.
Rewards for completing the penalty quest is now available. Would you like to confirm the rewards? Yes or no?
Rewards? The word rewards jumped right out. Too bad. The problem was he currently didn't have any energy left whatsoever to confirm this and that. His situation simply didn't allow that. Never mind giving me rewards or not. Let me take a break first. His sights gradually blurred. Soon, Jinu fell into a deep slumber akin to a blackout. Sorry, gotta cough real quick. I don't need to be coughing while I'm reading to you.
Oh my gosh, what happened in here?
Next morning, a nurse entered Jinu's room. Jinu's room, only for... I see O next to the W, and I just think it's saying Jin-O, but it's not. A nurse entered Jinu's room, only for her eyes to open up wide in surprise. The patient was lying sprawled on the floor, while sand was everywhere as far as she could see. Not only that, the patient too was full of sand as well. She threw the medical chart on the bed and urgently pressed the emergency buzzer.
Please, someone get over here right away!
Soon, the doctor in charge rushed into the room.
What happened? What's the matter with Mr. Sung Jin-woo?
I don't know. Everything was fine until last night. Yet this morning...
For now, let's relocate him back on the bed. 1, 2.
Two people lifted Jinu off the floor. I'm probably not going to get used to saying it because I see the words, but my head wants to say what I am seeing rather than how it's pronounced. That's on me. That's my bad. Two people lifted Jinu off the floor and placed him back on the bed. During the process, the back of Jinu's hand got scratched by the edge of the medical chart left on the bed, and his skin tore just a little, but no one noticed that.
Let's take a look.
The doctor then carefully examined Jinu's condition. However, he couldn't find anything wrong with the youth.
What the heck? Isn't he just in a deep sleep?
The doctor spat out a sigh of relief. A lot of spitting, a lot of swallowing of saliva, just a lot of that. Why not call him Jin like you did in the manhwa? You know what? That'd be so much easier. Because I always called him, even now I call him Jin. Why am I trying to say the whole thing of his name? Sorry, it's a habit. Sorry. The doctor spat out a sigh of relief. The Hunters Association had requested the hospital to pay a special attention to this particular patient. Understandably, the doctor was scared almost out of his wits while thinking that something bad had happened here.
For now, let's let him be. Looks like he's in a really deep slumber at the moment.
The doctor in charge spoke to the nurse and was about to leave, but then he took a look around the room and scratched the side of his head.
By the way, this room might need a thorough cleaning, Miss Yura. Please take care of tidying this place up.
Yes, I shall, Doctor.
The doctor left the room and the nurse Choi Yura patted her chest down. What a relief it turned out to be nothing to worry about. Sure, they might not be the patient or the relatives of one themselves, but you wouldn't find a doctor or a nurse who wished ill on those they were in charge of. Wish we had that in America. Sorry, nope, we're not going to go down that road. The Hunters Hospital especially saw many heavily injured patients every day. At the bare minimum, she'd like to never see another one of patients she was looking after get worse under her care. She had calmed down a little now and began wondering about where should she start tidying this room up. But then she eyed spotted drops of blood on the floor.
Oh my.
The blood droplets were coming from the tip of the patient's hand that fell outside the bed. She got stunned by this and hurriedly searched for the wound on Jin's hand. Sorry, Jin. So she got stunned by this and hurriedly searched for the wound on Jin's hand before flipping it around.
What's going on here?
There definitely was a trace of flowing blood, but she could not find a single wound. She wiped the blood clean, yet the expected wound was not there.
Wait, could his injury heal in that short time?
Yua's heart began beating faster as she cautiously studied Jin's complexion. He was still submerged in a deep, deep sleep even now. Part 7. Daily Quest.
Ring! Daily Quest is now available.
Jin's eyes shot right open. He quickly raised himself up, and the first thing he did was to check the time. The needles of the clock just went past 16:30, meaning there was the leeway of 7 hours and 30 minutes before midnight. Good. Jin opened the mailbox.
Ring!
Daily quests, preparations to become strong. Press up, sit up, squat, and running. 0 out of 100 and 0 out of 10. Warning, incompletion of daily quests will result in appropriate levels of punishment.
It's the same thing again? He groaned out almost reflexively. No, perhaps this was for the better. Rather than a quest with impossible or hard to understand goals, this was far more preferable instead. Well, as long as he had enough time, he'd be able to complete this quest after all, although his body might suffer for a bit. Jin got down to the floor this time and began the press-up. 1! Obviously, he was not planning on being dragged to yet another suspicious place and get almost killed there. 2! He got lucky the first night and survived, but there was no guarantee that would happen tonight as well. 3! He raised his head a little and confirmed the contents of the quest and noticed that every time he performed a press-up, it was being recorded in real time as well.
Ring!
You've completed 1 press-up. Press up 100 times. Incomplete. 7 out of 100.
Ring!
You completed 1 press-up. Press up 100 times. Incomplete. 8 out of 100.
He wanted to make sure, so he only went down halfway and got back up, but as expected, that didn't count. Now we finally realize why the so-called press-ups of yesterday didn't count. He had to perform the proper press-ups or it wouldn't be counted at all. Give me a break. Jin was dumbfounded, but didn't stop the exercise. He still had 50 more press-ups to go. After that, sit-ups, squats, and running were waiting for him. And 3 hours later...
Press up 100 times, complete. 100 out of 100. Sit up 100 times, complete. 100 out of 100.
I said 100. I said 100 out of 100.
100 out of 100. Squat 100 times, complete. 100 out of 100. Running 10 kilometers, incomplete. 9 out of 10.
Jin lapped the outer perimeter of the hospital once and arrived back in front of his room. He was currently bent over and panting out heavily. His heart felt like it might explode at any second, but he couldn't give up yet. I worked so crazy hard until now, so no way I would. He somehow managed to open the door and took a step forward. When he did that, ring! Total distance ran 10 kilometers. You've completed running 10 kilometers. It was over. Jin fell down to his knees. His breath reeked of something sweet and bitter. His face and back were soaked in sweat. As Jin tried to regulate his heavy, rough breathing while thick sweat drops continuously dripped down, a familiar message popped up in front of his eyes. Ring! You've completed daily quest preparations to become strong. Completion rewards have arrived. Would you like to confirm? Yes or no? Jin momentarily thought about forgetting about everything and simply laying down in defeat, but quickly changed his mind. At least for now, he wanted to confirm what these rewards things could actually be with his own eyes first. Confirm. Ring! The following rewards are available. Reward 1, full recovery of the current physical condition. Reward 2, 3 additional stat points. Reward 3, 1 random box. Would you like to collect them all? Why are there so many of them? That was the first thought to enter his dazed mind after he took a gander at the contents of his rewards. But when he thought about it a little deeper, one of those rewards seemed rather useful right now. And there was also one that made him curious about what it could actually mean. For now, he urgently needed the first reward available. He was on the brink of collapsing here. Since there really was a penalty for failure, the odds of completion rewards being real were pretty darn high as well. Well, trying wouldn't hurt anyways, right? Seriously, this thing wouldn't throw him back into the penalty zone again after it said it'd give him the rewards, now would it? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 10. And we have read 10 chapters of the solo leveling light novel. And I have to say to all of you, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this. These are long reads though. Looking at the time, that was 3 hours. Accounting for the times I had to stop in order to step away and speak to family or go downstairs and help out food, this was still a long endeavor. So I'm actually glad I didn't try to schedule Death Stranding for today. That'll be the focus for tomorrow. But yeah, overall, I like reading this. I do. I definitely do. This was a good read. Thank you for your work. Oh, the work is not finished, my friend. We have many more sessions to go. I do thank you all for your support, though. Thank you for all the support you showed during this entire series, because seeing as how long it took me to get through all of these chapters, this is going to be an even heftier endeavor than anything else that I've read in quite a long time. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to it. And now that I have a good idea, I know how to be better prepared for our next session. Like I said, this is going to be our trial run to see how things go. And seeing as how things went kind of smoothly, I'm looking forward to our next session next Monday. And if nothing else is... Actually, you know what? Let me just check my... Yep, I had a feeling. The next Monday, a Monday that is that also falls... let me just say this concisely. I'm thinking about how often I will do these, because doing these every Monday is one thing, but I also need to take into account days when it's the final day of a month, and I have to do One Piece reflections as well, and just think about how much of my day is taken up by how often I read these. So, reading these forwards, I will keep everyone informed of how often I will do these. Because I think, doing them every single Monday, it's a good idea on paper, but I also need to think about, what if something goes on? that day. Are you early or are you late? Unfortunately, Don T, you have just missed me finishing chapter 10. After 3 hours and 30 minutes, I am now done reading all the first 10 chapters of the light novel. So, I'll do some deliberating to see how. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah, exactly. You're early for the next session. I wish you all a wonderful week. Good night. Good night, Mihai. Thank you for stopping by. I will think about how often I read 10 chapters for solo leveling, because it's not like the series is going anywhere. So whether I do it every Monday or maybe every other Monday possibly, we'll have to see. I'll deliberate with some of my members and I'll deliberate with some of my moderators and see what they think as well. And I'll also get back to you guys on whether this is going to become a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing. But overall, this was still a fun endeavor. And for the people who have wanted me to read the light novel for this series for a while, and I just never got to it because I had so much stuff going on, and I just wanted to, have the freedom to do what I wanted during the time you all asked me to, I am happy that I am finally bringing it to all of you who wanted this on the channel. So overall, this was good. But yeah, like I said, I'll deliberate and see how often. Twice a week? If I said, I'm not talking about increasing how much I do more. I'm talking about, like, since this is a long endeavor, I'm wondering if I should do it every other week, not trying to increase how quickly I do it, because this takes a while. It does. It's 3 hours. 3 hours of just straight reading. Even with breaks, it's still a long time. So I'm thinking. But it is not going to be twice a week. It is definitely not going to be twice a week. So I'll get to you. We'll talk about this later. But this was a fun endeavor, and now it's time for me to eat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to my solo leveling light novel casual read-through. Dramatic reading, actually, since I'm doing voices for it as well. All I can say to you is, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. And because I know you're coming back anyway. So have a fantastic day, and once again, as always, later, peoples.